Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Urbana City Council Committee of the Whole. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Here.
Mr. Evans,
Here.
Miss Hersey,
Here.
Miss Kolisetty,
Here.
Miss Bishop,
Here.
Miss Wilkin,
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here.
Thank you. Next is approval of the minutes from July 31st, August 14th, August 28th, September 11th, joint special meeting, September 11th minutes, and September 25th minutes, 2023.
I'll move approval for all of those minutes. Second.
You move by Jaya, second by Mary Alice. Is there any discussion, corrections, input? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. Next is additions to the agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? Yes, Chandra?
I propose that we move the presentation number 3 to before the Hope Village presentations.
Any input or objections on that? Okay, so we'll move presentation 3 to the first one and have the two on somewhat related topics after that. And yes, Mayor Marlin?
There are a couple of changes we'd ask. Number one, we're going to pull items number 3 and 4, which are the development agreements with Champaign County Economic Development Corporation and Experience Champaign-Urbana. Those will be moved to the January 2nd meeting. And then we are going to reschedule presentation number 2 to a future date as soon as we can.
If I could just make one correction, it's the January 16th meeting
Oh,
that
sorry,
we're moving
you're right.
EDC and ECU.
Okay.
Okay, so to clarify, that was moving items 3 and 4 to January 16th meeting.
Correct.
And what was the other one?
We're going to reschedule the presentation from the Champaign County Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless. A future date.
Okay, any input on that? All right, any other additions or changes to the agenda? Okay, then next we have presentations and public input. Typically in something related, we do the presentations first and then public input. So change of order, first presentation will be project labor agreements presented by Council Members Bishop and Kolisetty, presented by Kevin Sage, United Association, Local 149. This would be plumbers and pipe fitters. And to clarify, we'll have 10 minutes for presentations and a motion to extend, if approved by council.
Okay, I'll introduce Kevin. Before I bring him up, I just wanted to say a few things. I wanted to bring this information to not only the council, but also the community, because I've been speaking with a lot of the union leaders in Champaign County, and there's a real need for more applicants for these union jobs. Union jobs in communities with high poverty rates, such as Urbana, can significantly benefit residents. I know sometimes unions have this bad rap, but they uplift and significantly standardize living for individuals and families that contribute to reducing poverty levels. Additionally, unions frequently advocate for policies that support workers' rights, access to health care, and job security, all of which can contribute to more stable and a financially secure community. To that end, enter project labor agreements, or PLAs. PLAs prioritize local hiring, fostering job creation within the city, and can enhance safety standards, resulting in better quality infrastructure for residents. Additionally, these agreements can provide cost savings by streamlining processes and avoiding potential delays. And there's a very loud example of a much delayed project right here in Urbana. So as the city moves forward with construction projects like the fire station and others, I want to make sure that local skilled residents will be thought of first for these jobs. Excuse me. And so tonight we have Kevin Sage here with us to offer more details about PLAs and hopes that we can ultimately establish one here as the county has done. Kevin started as an apprentice with Plumbers and Pipefitters Local 149 in 1999 and has worked for several local contractors such as TNT Mechanical, A&R Mechanical, Davis Houck Mechanical as an apprentice, journeyman, foreman, and general foreman. In 2005, he began instructing apprentice classes for the local union and moved into the training director position in December of 2008. In 2013, he was elected to the position of business agent and became a representative for the local on the East Central Illinois Building and Construction Trades Council. Kevin served as vice president from 2016 to 2017 and was elected as president in 2017. Thank you for joining us tonight, Kevin, and you can have a seat up here if you like. Yeah, you can plug your flash drive into there.
There we go. How's that? Better? All right. All right, I've got a little bit of a PowerPoint here. So what we're talking about here is a community workforce agreement. And I just, first of all, I'd like to thank you for letting me come and talk about this and entertaining just the discussion about this. But just like to tell you a little bit about what a project labor agreement or a community workforce agreement is, kind of how they work. So like I said, I'm trying to make this as brief as I can. And if you have questions, you can stop me and we can discuss a little bit. So community workforce agreements, they have been around since the 1930s. Actually started with the federal government when they were building dams. And since then, they've been used both for public and for private projects, mainly for construction. And so they've been around for many years. And what it actually does, it establishes terms and conditions of employment for all trades. So each trade is going to have a collective bargaining agreement with their contractors that are signatory to them. But then the community workforce agreement, it's an agreement with either a public or a private entity and the contractors and the unions. So what it does, it sets hours of work, wages, which usually go back to the collective bargaining agreements of each trade. It sets, one of the big things establishes is if there's any kind of disputes on the job, the trades have agreed that they will take care of that themselves, so there won't be any kind of work stoppages. The work keeps on going. There won't be any kind of stoppage. We work through it. We work through it ourselves within our group, and we keep the job progressing. Now, whenever there's a community workforce agreement in place, it's always included in the bid specs before the contractors submit their bids. That way, everybody who is starting on the project knows what's happening, knows it's on the project, and knows that there's going to be a set of guidelines that they need to use when they bid the project. So why use a community workforce agreement? First thing, job site safety. When you have a community workforce agreement on the job, it's going to be a safe job. And actually, there's been a study here at the U of I. Let's see, I got it here. The Illinois Economic Policy Institute, with the Project for Middle Class Renewal at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, they found that union construction job sites are much safer than their non-union counterparts. Data from almost 37,000 Occupational Health and Safety Administration inspections in 2019 showed that union projects were 19% less likely to have health and safety violations and had an average of 34% fewer violations per inspection when compared to non-union projects. So what that's saying is that the union projects were much safer. There were more guidelines, OSHA guidelines, that were kept in place, and the contractors made sure that their workers were safe and not doing unsafe things on the job. Like I said before, it avoids strikes or work stoppages. If a community workforce agreement is in place, then everybody on the job understands that if there's an issue on the job, if something is happening that jurisdictional within trades or something jurisdictional between the contractors or between anybody on the job, the work does not stop. We have PLAs with the University of Illinois, and there are issues that come up every once in a while, but there are never any work stoppages. We continue to work right through it. While the work is happening on the project, the trades get together and we figure out how to work through it, and we come up with some sort of some solution to the problem, and then we continue on with the work. So the work never stops. Another good thing with it is that there's a steady supply of labor from local hiring halls. So the way hiring halls work is that we have people to go out on job sites. When the contractors, they may start a job with just a few people, they need to ramp up, and maybe they need 30 people the next day. We have that manpower supply, so we can get that manpower to them, and it's local people. It's people from the community. We aren't bringing people in from other states, from all around the country. That money is going right back into the community. As I said earlier, it provides the dispute resolution process. Within the community workforce agreement, there's provisions that if there's any kind of conflict, there's a way to resolve it. We take care of that outside of the job site. The project continues on, and we take care of that without stopping any of the work. Encourage apprenticeships. Apprenticeship, it can be life-changing for somebody, and not only life-changing for that person, but life-changing for generations beyond that person. These jobs have good pay. They've got health care. They've got good pensions. They're safe jobs to work on. We want to encourage that, I think, within the community, and this is a way to do that. It assures uniform benefits and wages to a local workforce. As I said, local unions use local workforce. We use people from the community. So when they get onto these projects, the money that's in that project comes right back into the community, and it gets spent right here. It doesn't go off to a different state. It doesn't go to a different community. It stays right here and helps us. So the goals of a community workforce agreement, local jobs. So that's kind of the goal of all of this, right? When we're spending money here locally, we want the jobs to go to local people and to keep it right here. You want to protect public funds. So as you're spending money, you have to be fiscally responsible. One good way is to make sure, as I said, the money stays here locally. You want to make sure that your money is spent well, that you're going to get a good project at the end, that you aren't going to have delays, that you aren't going to have injuries on the job. I think you are dealing with a project that has delays, and I've seen some unsafe things on that project. You don't have any of that happening when you have a community workforce agreement. That part of it goes away. You're protecting your public funds by having a good project. It's getting done right, and you don't have delays. Diverse local workforce. What we do right now, we've got, I'm working with Nick Elder with the Education for Employment system, and we're bringing in high school kids to do a dual credit out at Parkland, and so they're getting credit for both high school and Parkland credits to learn construction trades. So people from every local union go out to Parkland. We spend a couple of weeks with kids doing some hands-on things, and we're trying to increase diversity through that. We also work with the Highway Construction Careers Training Program, and that's Elise Duty Jones, and she has a grant through IDOT, and we support her, and it brings in a lot of diversity to our locals too. She has kind of it's sort of a pre-apprenticeship program, and we can bring people in from the community. They get hands-on experience. Again, the trades spend time with her and her class and do hands-on projects, and then we get those people placed into apprenticeships. Non-discrimination in hiring and dispatching. The way we dispatch is just on a list. So as people get laid off, they go onto a list in the order that they were laid off, and they come back off of that list and go to work in the same order that they got laid off. So the first one laid off is the first one to go back to work. There's no discrimination. It doesn't matter who it is on the list. That person goes out when it's their turn to come up. And I think I'm just about out of time. Are there any questions? That was kind of a real fast overview. Hopefully you got a little bit out of this.
Great. Thank you. Yes, James?
Thank you, Kevin. When I was on the county board, we tried to get a PLA in place, and it didn't work out so well at that point. But now, thanks to Steve Summers, I have a copy of the one that's in place now. Right. How do you feel that that's going from your perspective?
It's been pretty limited. There's been 2 projects, the jail and the building there downtown. I think it's going well. There's definite goals in there that we're working with contractors to hit. I'm not sure that they've reached the goal, but there's been a real effort on the contractor's part to get to those goals. So we've at least got engagement from our contractors now to go do job fairs and go into the community and talk to people and try to recruit more people into the apprenticeship. So I think it's working. I think it's just going to take a little time to get to where we reach the goals that we have set in there.
All right, thank you. Because when we were looking at this in 2014, 2015, I think, with the county, one of the challenges was we didn't, I would say the workers were not coming with one voice. And one of the challenges was opportunity, to make sure there was equitable opportunity. And
correct.
And you're saying that the goals that have been put in here are addressing that, and you feel like they're going well?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
One more question? Okay, great. Thank you very much for the presentation.
All right, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And our next presentation is Proposed Changes to Hope Village Site by Robert Lewis. I'm not sure if we have an introduction or if Mr. Lewis will do the introduction.
Mr. Lewis is a design engineer that has been working with a community group from Ward 3 in Carver Park regarding the building of Hope Village and the changes that could be done to mitigate a lot of issues regarding how the community deals with that.
Great. Thank you very much. If you know the drill with the mic, and you'll have 10 minutes.
Got 10 minutes. Thank you, Mayor Marlin, my ward person,
Mr. Lewis,
for
turn
this
your mic on.
opportunity.
Could you be sure that the green light's on the mic and pull it
Says
close?
green.
Okay, we just need the volume up. Thank you.
Okay, you're good to go. Can I get my minutes back? I'm just kidding. I was asked by our community to take a look at this. I didn't think I'd have to do this again, but I had an opportunity to take a hard look at the information that was provided. I got a stack of information. I came up with about 22 points relative to what has been done. You have a document before you, a sketch that I've done, and some very specific points as to what the community is trying to get across to the city council as to what their concerns were. They tried to follow the protocols, going and getting people's opinions and putting it all before you. They read into the minutes of the meeting, all the fundamental things. Unfortunately, as I attended a few of the meetings, and I asked them questions, and I didn't get any answers. I don't need people to give me answers. I can get them for myself. So I noticed that what caused a red flag for me, one, was a young lady on the council asked the mayor, can they do this by right? That was a red flag. The second one was when somebody asked the design team about why they weren't attaching to Federal Drive. And they commented to you guys. They said, I do what the boss says. That's a red flag. You are the controlling body for this community. And to me, you're the boss. And he was speaking to the boss at that time. So I said, I guess I got to really get into this and find out what's up. But I'm going to go through my points. And a lot of this information won't be foreign to you at all. My recommendations would be to move the Hope Village to the north, link this complex to Federal Drive per its address, 1799 Federal Drive. And I'll get back to the issue on bullet point number 3, relocation of the detention basin. If you opted to do it by right and go through Carver Drive, what that does is open it up to the general public, the entire basin. We know in communities where you open up a detention basin to the general public or a storage container or anything like that on an industrial site, do it on the weekend, it get loaded up. But the most significant thing about doing this to the general public, it's the children close by in the community and what could happen to them. And in my opinion, it might put a heavy burden on the 501(c) in terms of trying to deal with risk management associated with that. So my conclusion was the best thing to do is put it within the confines of the Hope Village. By doing so, since they requested to be a closed community, what that means to me is we can control who has access to the detention basin. The second part of it was to take the agricultural part of that and move it to the south. And per the PUD, the Planning Commission recommended that primarily to protect our neighbor in Champaign. We have met with the people in Champaign, the engineers and the Community Development Department at Mount Olive Church to understand what their concerns really were. They have I'll say, an infrastructure that suffers from benign neglect.
Can you move your mic a little closer?
Pardon?
Move your mic a little closer.
I'm sorry. They have an infrastructure in that, is that good enough? Are we good? Yeah. I can get louder. That's okay. But their infrastructure is in pretty bad shape. They mentioned accessing Carver. Carver's okay for now, but it's the same age as Dory Miller. And according to the Champaign Public Works, that has to be replaced in the next 5 years. They can't patch it anymore. They have a lot of control problems with regard to water runoff, and their piping systems in the ground won't handle it. And our job, I guess, as far as neighbor is concerned, is to try and protect them the best we can until they get something taken care of in their facility. That's why we elected to, well, I suggest moving the agriculture area to the south, to protect them from any potential issues associated with the detention basin and the hydrology of the oil of the soil that's there, that they have to be dealing with to try and repair their community. The initial start of this, and what caught my attention, was the lobbying was done in Champaign first. The people that lived in our community in Urbana didn't even know what was going on until after the fact. So there was obviously a deliberate effort and a very strategic plan in the very beginning of how they wanted to do this. And that's why when we saw what was available and when I saw the drawings, I recognized that that strategic plan was to use Carver Park in the very beginning. And what the people said or what you put into it, and that's perplexing to our our plan commission, obviously. Very perplexing. There's a lot of moving parts in that plan. And getting to the agricultural area, some of the concerns I had was basically the fact that it was a misguided design, in my opinion. And the neighborhood deserves better. I worked with our people for almost 3 months. They gathered information, they brought it to this body, they gave you all their input. They were going against something that was already set in place. I think that was part of the problem that your plan commission felt because they moved it to you for the decision making. You are the decision makers, and you are the boss. So if you want this to happen, all you gotta be is the boss. And the guy said, I do what the boss says. I'm not being facetious, but you have the power to do that. And you're making an investment in a site at the tune of $850,000, and you can't say what's going on in it? I don't see that. I know there's other investors involved in this, but you are the governing body. And if you want to call the shots this way or the other way, it's up to you. But I would prefer if you take the initiative of the people that are in your community and try to do what is right for them. There's one other issue. I only got about a minute left, and I'm going to have to address it before we go. And that was the issue of medically fragile people. I want to point out, none of these people behind me were against Hope Village at all. But they have been talking about this medically fragile persons all in the literature, and I classify that myself as white noise. And I want to get some clarity to the white noise. And that's what I have before you tonight, some clarity. I could get emotional about this, but I know about people with medically fragile. I know what the requirements are. In our plan commission's documentation, they had 2 classifications. One was family, and the other one was institutional. My question is, how are these people being addressed? They broadcasted it, but if you look at the actual 5013C charter, I don't see that. I don't know what to say about this. As I meant, if you look at the 4 bullet points at the top, that's 95% of the solution for the people here. 95%. If you did that, we won't be back again. And I'm out of time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any questions? We could take maybe 2 questions if there are some.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
She has to call him.
it's a hard one. I was going to let you choose since you're going, okay, we'll go James, or sorry, Chris was your,
Thank you for the presentation. Alderman Lewis, you know that there's already building back there, a
Well,
community center.
I understand. I had
Well,
one note.
what would you do with that building?
Well, I could call the people down in Arthur. You ever seen them move a, no, I'm just kidding. No, we're in the 21st century, and moving that building, I checked on how far it had to go, and I'd have to really do the serious calculations, but you can only have to move it 362 feet, maybe. That's no big deal, not in today's time. We got good recycling systems for concrete. If you don't want that, you can recycle it. There's a lot of things a contractor can do if they want to. That's not an issue. And we have, I went out and took a look. I've been out there to the site. I got pictures of it and all that. So I'm not concerned about what exists. And by the way, if you want to do this again sometime, you don't need to go through this. You can use, you can use a computer to model all this stuff and just look at it and decide what you want. You could look at it, the interior. They had this stuff on online. You can go down and buy all these 400 square foot area things and have them shipped to the site. And they'll set them there for you. But from a design standpoint, the concerns I have are, how are you going to address the institutional elements here for the people in real need? And the basic need for a person with medically fragile is 24-hour service by a registered nurse. I know that much. I had to deal with that in the federal side. That's the fact. And they are automatically available for this facility, I would assume, since they've discussed it so much. So what are the buildings designed really for? Are they just for people with normal everyday life? Or are they addressing a population? I don't know what that percentage would be, but it's necessary to have capability of dealing with these people.
thank you for that answer, and we'll do one more question, Chandra. Any others, one more? Yes, Mary Alice?
I just want to be clear about your point about the medically fragile people. Are you referring to the services that would be available to the infrastructure for the services? Is that what you're
Well,
referring to?
I'm referring to that because in your PUD originally, you had two categories. One was for families. The other one was for institution for this 11.5 acres of land. That was in the plan. It could be confusing to a lot of people in the design phase of it. That's true enough. But you got to consider every element within there and address it in some way. The first 4 bullet points here addresses 95% of what the people are asking you to do. And it's in your privy to do that. Yes, ma'am.
Could you address the whole issue regarding the access via Carver Drive versus Federal Drive?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. That was in the PUD. That's what you said the address had to be. I would have a difficult time. The address, if you went to Carver, would be 61820, and you've got 61801. If somebody plugged that in on the GPS, what would happen to them? They get lost trying to find it.
Thank you. I think that's all time and questions we have for now. Thank you very much for your presentation.
If you need my help, I'm available. Just check with the mayor, our rep.
Thank you. And next we have public input. Before we start, just like to preface that we have up to 2 hours for public input. So that would be starting at 7:34, cut off at 9:34. We'll call it 5 by the time I finish talking. We'll have 5 minutes per speaker. And then we have some emails that have asked to be read into the record. We'll do 3 minutes per reading each email. They will be in the record and in the meeting minutes. Since we do have a lot of people here tonight, if you feel like your points have been addressed or you can consolidate them, please feel free to, so that we can give everyone an opportunity who would like to speak on different points, and ask that we keep it respectful and towards the issue so we can all have a safe space to express concerns. Please state your name for the record. You can approach the mic, and each person will have up to 5 minutes.
Good evening. I have a kid at home, so I'm going to have to present it and go home because he doesn't see his mom much. Okay, so dear Mayor and council members, I'm the Cunningham Township Supervisor, and I'm speaking in strong support for Hope Village. I request that the council accept the proposal without amendment, which includes numerous appropriate changes that have been made to the proposal to address neighborhood concerns based on my review of Plan Commission meetings and the memo before you this evening. I also ask that you not delay the proposal, as this could compromise the ability for Hope to apply for necessary IDA funding due in mid-January. If that's delayed, we're looking at a whole other year before our participants could potentially live at Hope. Hope Village fills a critical gap in our community, providing small homes that are fully complete. They say tiny homes, but they're fully complete homes with kitchens, 24/7 case management on-site, garden and recreation space for our most vulnerable community residents. The proposal for Hope Village before you will save lives, and it will let formerly homeless residents, many of them with disabilities, live in dignity or die in dignity, as the case with many homeless residents who die 10 to 25 years earlier than the rest of the population. And it will allow them to do this without doing it on the street. Hope will also be a community service location for the community as a whole. Carl Mobile Clinic will be there. There will be food access and delivery. There'll be events in their community space, and we at Township hope to partner with Hope to host township events at that location and bring our services closer. That Carl and the U of I are at the table is an important precedent for homeless services. If you look at Peoria, if you look at some of the collar counties of Chicago, you will see that hospitals are engaged in homeless services there. That's a big piece of what we've been trying to have happen here. Instead of Carl and OSF to start discharging homeless residents to the street, we need them to discharge them to an appropriate place. Right now, we don't have that place. This project will also bring significant new state dollars to our community for the homeless. Cunningham Township will be one of the referring agencies, and we're intimately aware of the need. We have a hotel program focused on medically fragile homeless residents that has been operating for several years. I will give an example. We worked with a woman who for years used to sleep in front of a local grocery store in her wheelchair, winter and summer. After a year of engagement with our office, she felt comfortable enough for us to enter into a hotel. We helped get her housed in subsidized housing, but there's no supportive services. She recently has fallen 3 times in the last 2 weeks. She really had needed a referral to Hope Village, where there was permanent supportive housing. I want to point out that this development is 30 units on 7 acres. It's one of the least dense developments in town. We have nearly the same number of residents in our emergency housing program with no on-site staff in the downtown neighborhood. Despite having residents concerned nearby, it's been very quiet and successful. We can say the same of the See You at Home's house on Springfield, where neighbors weren't even aware it was occupied yet when See You at Home staff members knocked on the door to say hello. And Homestead, which was protested in my neighborhood in Ward 2, it was built, and then the residents from Ward 2 came back when I was on city council and apologized, saying that they had not had the problems they expected. I want to speak to the Carver Drive versus Federal Drive access. Federal Drive access, requiring Federal Drive access, is discriminatory. It sends a message that formerly homeless residents are second-class citizens and need to come and go out the back door. And if you don't believe me, go drive Federal Drive and then drive Carver. I did that yesterday. It threatens funding. IDA will likely frown on a provision that they will see as discriminatory. It delays emergency response. Although on-site staff will help reduce emergency calls and provide lift assist, this population has high health needs. Even a few-minute difference can make a difference with a diabetic seizure or a stroke or heart attack. We had one individual who I really wish we could refer who has had a seizure 3 times in the last month, and it's just a matter of seconds getting him to the hospital. This is, Federal Drive is inaccessible. The MTD bus, look it up. I see you, MTD. Okay. I sent
Sorry,
you the
it's all
rest
the
of my
time.
notes on email. You should have received that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the input. Next speaker, if you would please state your name for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Audra Owens, and I stand here one more time to let everybody here know, that Carver Park, Crispus Attucks Drive, we do support housing for the medically fragile, which after being here so many times, I looked it up myself, and it says that you need 24-hour medical care. You have to have help with dressing, with feeding, with bathing. And to me, that does not sound like somebody or somebody's who have access to a bus route. And if they come in on Federal Drive and what have you, they will have a straighter shot to Carl. They will have a straight shot to OSF. So there is nothing stopping emergency vehicles getting in and out via the Carver Drive. Anyway, being made aware by the Warriors of the North and United, it has been highlighted that those who are chronically homeless and those who are unable to find housing are also being placed under the umbrella of medically fragile, whether they are or not. The only thing that I have been told is that a lot of these are being counted under the umbrella of medically fragile. They're being put under this umbrella simply because HUD has ceased financing transitional housing. We are still here before this governing body because the residents of Carver Park and Crispus Park Drive have been and are still being ignored. And our concerns have been and continue to be dismissed by the city of Urbana, who gave the purchasers, this construction company, whomever, by right approval, which means basically that building that they put down there so fast, they had the right to do it because they were given permission to go ahead and do it. I'm going to shift gears here. On December 7th, I attended a planning commission. I attended the meeting that they had adjourned and re-adjourned, or restarted, that stated that a closed session had to be held with the city attorney regarding previously discussed disconcerting issues that were focused upon by the commission itself to the purchasers and construction company, and that had not been resolved. It was at this time that I saw the mayor enter this said meeting. It was determined by the people who were here that the very presence of the mayor being in that closed session could be determined as coercive, whether she spoke or not. Her presence could therefore be determined to affect the outcome of that body's decision-making. So to that end, I am proposing that the mayor recuse herself from voting upon anything that involves any issue of Hope Village.
Thank you for your input. Next speaker, please state your name. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
A client of mine is coming up to speak.
Hi, my name is Matthew Slavin. I apologize. My speech is not that well right now. I prepared a statement and I asked Claudia here to read it for me.
Fine. Okay, I'm 42 years old, but I have been homeless for several years because of my serious health conditions. I don't have any family to help me. I'm a type 1 brittle diabetic, which means that I depend on insulin in order to live because my body doesn't produce any insulin at all. I'm brittle because my blood sugars are hard to control, and it is much harder when I've been on the streets or in the shelters. I also have a very severe seizure disorder. Loud noises and loud environments, chaotic environments, flashing lights like on a police car can throw me into a grand mal seizure. When I stayed at the homeless shelter, I was afraid I was going to die from seizures because the environment was so chaotic and loud. I have been lucky to be able to stay in hotels while I am waiting for housing, but the problem with the hotel is that I don't have a kitchen and I can't have enough food to store or space to fix what is best for me. I have been to the emergency room and I have been hospitalized more times than I can count just this year. Each emergency makes me feel like I am closer to death. When Champaign County Healthcare Consumers was trying to figure out what was needed and what would work best for people like me, I'm one of the people who had long conversations with the director, Claudia Lenhoff. She had helped me get vouchers to live in apartments, but something always went wrong in the apartments. They were run by slumlords, and they were chaotic and loud, and they were infested by roaches, vermin, and bed bugs. One time the ceiling fell in on me and ruined everything, and I was back out on the streets again. And some were not even accessible for somebody with mobility disabilities. People like me need more appropriate solutions for permanent housing, and we need housing that also brings services to us. That is Hope Village. I don't have an address, so I don't know who represents me on any government body, but I hope that my voice can be heard. I've heard opponents say that people who need to live at Hope Village might be dangerous and we might ruin their neighborhoods. I'm not dangerous. I'm sick. I can't even walk very far, even with my walker. I hope I live long enough to get to be one of the first people to move into Hope Village. Thank you, Matthew Slavin.
Thank you for the input. Yes, if you need to sit, I think that's definitely a reasonable accommodation. You got the thing, thank you. Yeah. Is that a wireless mic too? Okay. You can sit where you're comfortable and we can bring the wireless mic, or up here is fine. Okay, thank you. Please state your name and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Terry Townsend. I'm the former vice chairman of the Housing Authority of Champaign County. I was born and raised here, so I don't have to go to the site and take a look at it. I wrote what is called the Declaration of African American Voters, and this declaration has been deposited at the Board of Trustees at the University of Illinois. What we're doing is asking them to withdraw from the Hope Village Partnership. I'm going to go through some of this declaration. Whereas the Dr. George Washington Carver subdivision, neighborhood residents and stakeholders are opposed to the proposed location of Hope Village. Whereas Dr. George Washington Carver subdivision, neighboring residents and stakeholders have repeatedly voiced support for tiny houses known locally as Hope Village. We do not want to be a supply chain for experimentation.
Sorry, Mr. Townsend, could you move the mic just a little closer so they can hear
closer?
you well? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Whereas this, can you hear me now? Good. Whereas the City of Urbana Ordinance number 2023-07023 states, the final site plan is responsive to the concerns of neighboring residents, and at the time of the submittal of the final plan, the applicant stated no significant changes. I repeat that, no significant changes. The applicant did not comply with the City of Urbana Ordinance number 2023-07-023. Whereas the applicant held a forum with Dr. George Washington Carver Subdivision residents, neighboring residents, and stakeholders, no public discussion occurred. It was not a consultant engagement. Again, the applicant did not comply with the City of Urbana Ordinance number 2023-07-023. I'm going to go down to their 501c3. Whereas the applicant 501c3 Articles of Incorporation Hope Village submitted to the Illinois Secretary of State states the purpose is to provide and support the provisions of health and support services to individuals who are suffering from homelessness, chronic transitional housing arrangements, or chronic inability to afford permanent housing in Urbana, Illinois, or other suitable geographical areas. As you have heard from other speakers, medically fragile has been used over and over and over. That's not the same definition they submitted to the state of Illinois. This broader charge raises significant questions about every aspect of this proposed development. I want to talk about the detention pond. Whereas it can be a breeding ground for mosquitoes, transmit diseases, and because of the detention basin's pond, close proximity to Dr. George Washington Carver and Crispus Attucks residents, it is a true health and safety hazard. And whereas Hope Village Detention Basin Pond is an attractive nuisance, it will be appropriate at any stage of the development of Hope Village for residents to seek injunctive relief. Now, once again, we've talked about traffic impact studies. I want you to listen to what I wrote about that. The traffic impact studies are biased, they're self-serving, and they use the wrong metric to measure the negative impact traffic will have on the quality of life in and around the George Washington Carver subdivision. Traffic is not just about car ownership of prospective Hope Village residents. It is also about business travel. Fire trucks, service trucks, ambulances, Hope Village staff, University of Illinois students, Hope Village residents, family, friends, and community residents. That has not been said ever in any of the documents. Whereas traffic impacts analysis ignore City of Champaign traffic and parking requests and traffic control orders in the George Washington Carver subdivision, you need to ask, what are you basing your opinions on? They're not scientific. Now, I want to just try to hurry up and do this. I just learned about a submittal today that was sent to the council. A criteria for approval. I'm just going to speak to these questions. The applicant talks about public input. They speak of the preliminary process, not the final process. All the stuff that you receive, that happened before you pass the ordinance. Throughout America, tiny houses are not constructed where they negatively impact the quality of the life for existing residents. Check it. Convenience, that's part of what you're supposed to look at for the approval.
I'm sorry, that's all the time we have for now. You can feel free to email the council, and we can include it in the minutes for the next meeting. Okay.
What I'm doing is this. I'm going to give you a copy of what was submitted to the University of Illinois. We will be meeting with him soon. This is the 501c3 that was submitted that gives a different definition than what's been argued in most of the documents. And I think I had a definition of medically fragile.
I think the clerk can accept those documents. Yep. Thank you. And if the next speaker would like to approach the microphone, please state your name. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Katie Harmon. I'm the coordinator for the Champaign County Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless. For those who aren't familiar, we're a consortium of over 40 member organizations who are committed to preventing and ending homelessness here in Champaign County. At our most recent meeting, our membership voted unanimously to support and approve this letter of support for Hope Village. So I'd like to go ahead and read this letter aloud. Dear City of Urbana Council members, the Champaign County Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless writes this letter in support of Champaign County Healthcare Consumers Hope Village project. The CSPH, Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless, I know an acronym, seeks to end homelessness in Champaign County through client-centered services, community engagement, advocacy, and strategic resource allocation across a comprehensive continuum of service providers and community partners. Champaign County Healthcare Consumers is an active member of our group and provides critical services to those experiencing homelessness in Champaign County. Hope Village will provide 30 permanent supportive housing units, homes, to individuals experiencing housing instability or homelessness or are medically fragile. This is a needed resource in our community as Hope Village specifically aims to serve those who have high medical support needs, which is often a barrier to obtaining permanent housing. Permanent supportive housing is not an emergency shelter or transitional housing. Rather, the focus is on providing affordable, long-term housing with case management and supportive services to ensure long-term housing stability. Hope Village allows for needed space and privacy between Hope Village residents while also minimizing isolation, both of which are key components in delivering permanent supportive housing in a trauma-informed manner. The design and operation of Hope Village will be trauma-informed, which is imperative as many individuals experiencing homelessness have faced significant traumatic events throughout their lives. Offering permanent supportive housing coupled with supportive services is a trauma-informed, evidence-based methodology in reducing chronic homelessness, improving housing stability, and the overall health of participants. Furthermore, permanent supportive housing has been shown to lower public costs associated with the use of crisis services such as shelters, hospitals, jails, and prisons, and that source is from the National Alliance to End Homelessness. The Champaign County Continuum of Service Providers to the Homeless is in full support of Hope Village and its mission to serve our community's most vulnerable residents. If we can be of further assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We have over 40 member organizations, and I still have a few minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and read the names of all of our member organizations. American Legion Auxiliary, Unit 24, Carle Health, Community Health Initiative, Center for Youth and Family Services, Champaign County Emergency Management Agency, Champaign County Healthcare Consumers, Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, Champaign Forward Regional Office of Education, Champaign Park District, Champaign-Urbana Mass Transit District, Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, Child Care Resource Service, City of Champaign Township, City of Urbana, Community Choices, Community Service Center of Northern Champaign County, Courage Connection, Crisis Nursery, See You at Home, Cunningham Children's Home, Cunningham Township, Department of Veterans Affairs, Developmental Services Center, Eastern Illinois Food Bank, Faith United Methodist Church, First Followers, Greater Community AIDS Project, Habitat for Humanity, Hope Center of Vineyard Church, Housing Authority of Champaign County, Land of Lincoln Legal Aid, Lifelinks, Mercy's Refuge, OSF Community Resource Center, The Pavilion, Rosecrans, the Salvation Army, Street Outreach Movement, the U of I Gender and Sexuality Resource Center, the U of I Student Assistance Center, the United Way of Champaign County, the University of Illinois School of Social Work, the Up Center, and the Village of Rantoul. Thank you.
Thank you for the input. Next speaker, if you please state your name, you'll have up to 5 minutes. And if we could have a reminder to keep the noise minimal in the audience so we can hear everyone. Thank you.
I would also ask that the public please has regard for the clerk, as I am one person starting the timer. I want to ensure that I am being equitable with time, and I do apologize that I didn't get the timer started for the last speaker right at the start of their presentation. So I would just appreciate it if I'm assisting a member of the public that you give me a moment to get back here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lisa Dixon, and I want to express my support for Hope Village. Like many of the Hope Village opponents that you've been hearing from, I am a longtime resident of the city of Champaign. In fact, I was born and reared here in Champaign-Urbana, and like also some of the community leaders expressing opposition to Hope Village, I also do not live in the adjacent neighborhoods. However, as a fellow lifelong community member, I strongly feel the need to speak in support of Hope Village and the people who need Hope Village. I grew up in this community, and when I was very young, we lived on the north end at 404 East Church in the rear, and then we moved into the newly built original Bradley McKinley homes. And then my mother was able to work and get a loan from her credit union and buy a house. Now, she was a single mother rearing 3 children on her own in this community, and then she got a job as a caseworker in the public aid office, and she went from receiving welfare to working in the public welfare office, and then spent the rest of her entire life working for the betterment of the lives of other people in our community. And she taught her children compassion, patience, and charity, and she made sure that we never forgot and were never ashamed of where we came from, and to be proud of who we are and where we come from. Much of our time growing up was spent living in low-income and/or working-class neighborhoods, from the North End to Bradley McKinley to Holiday Park to Scottswood. We saw many friends, families, and individuals struggle because of systematic disparities in income, resources, and health. And we witnessed how many neighbors, acquaintances, and families struggled for years on end to keep food on the table and a roof overhead. And many of the folks whom I knew in school have fallen by the wayside over the years, often because of one bad economic turn for their parent or for them. For some people, it only takes one bad instance to derail years of hard work and upend their lives. Then one bad thing becomes a cascade of bad things, and suddenly you are behind on the water bill or on the light bill, on the heat, on the rent, on the mortgage. Then all of a sudden, all those years of hard work at minimum or barely above minimum wage or sudden health turn for the worse, and you become one of the people that you see on the street saying, "There but for the grace of God." The people who need and will joyfully use Hope Village are not empowered by our systems. They are not vocal, and they typically cannot keep up with local government proceedings and attend meetings like this one to advocate for themselves. They spend most of their time just trying to survive. Then to add insult to injury, they are often too often disparaged based on bigotry and prejudices that we have about homeless folks, about poor folks, about people of color, and those who have fallen on hard times. And this is why I feel compelled to speak on behalf of those folks in support of Hope Village, and why, given much of my family history, I am humbled and I am honored to do so. Hope Village is desperately needed. The 30 small homes within a well-thought-out, well-planned, and detailed village will be a place where healthcare and other services are brought to the people in a quiet, safe, and secure environment so that those who are the least of us can finally rest their weary heads and their bodies in peace, comfort, and long-awaited security. Hope Village is the perfect solution for the most vulnerable residents of our communities, and it is urgently needed. Lastly, I know that many of these individuals, the ones who are experiencing chronic homelessness and are medically fragile, I know that term's been thrown around a lot, come from many different neighborhoods in the Champaign-Urbana community, including some of the neighborhoods adjacent to where Hope Village would be built. But in the end, they are a part of the entire Champaign-Urbana community. They are a part of my community. They are a part of our community. And I strongly urge you to support Hope Village. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your input. If anyone else would like to address the committee of the whole, please state your name. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Melissa Courtwright. I'm the Executive Director with See You at Home, and I would like to read a letter that See You at Home has put together in support of Hope Village. See You at Home is honored to endorse Hope Village's initiative to build permanent supportive housing for medically fragile individuals experiencing homelessness. Our organization has been serving the homeless community in Champaign County for the last 12 years, providing a comprehensive range of services, including mid-barrier and advanced shelter, which includes a 12 to 18-month-long program. While our programs address 7 key areas of instability, we are not equipped to provide assistance to those who are medically fragile. This is a gap in services that, if not addressed, will leave some of the most vulnerable people in our community without support and stability. Homelessness significantly affects a person's physical and mental well-being. Individuals experiencing homelessness are at a higher risk of developing chronic health conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, heart attack, HIV, hepatitis C, depression, and substance abuse disorder, to name a few. These individuals have limited access to healthcare resources, which further exacerbates their health issues. At See You at Home, we have seen countless individuals attempt to stay in shelters that are not equipped to meet their medical needs, leading to increased hospitalizations and worsening of their chronic health conditions. We have seen individuals who are incontinent, unable to walk or stand on their own, have terminal cancer, low vision, require dialysis, for example, attempt to stay in a shelter that does not meet their medical needs. Providing permanent supportive housing for homeless individuals who are medically fragile is crucial in this community. As an organization, as you know, we recently purchased a home in Urbana where many in the neighborhood were initially apprehensive about having a homeless shelter in their community. However, we have had no issues or received any complaints from neighbors since our shelter moved into the home. We have also 6 other locations located throughout the Champaign-Urbana area. They are all integrated into the community and the neighborhoods in which they are located. We believe that our clients want what their neighbors want: peace, safety, and an opportunity for a full and good life. See You at Home would like to offer our wholehearted support for the implementation of Hope Village. We believe that this initiative will provide homeless individuals with a chance to receive health care, case management, and a place they can call home. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Next speaker, please state your name. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Maria Ryan, and I'm a long-term resident of Urbana, currently in Ms. Kolisetty's ward, Ward 4, but for a couple of decades in Ward 2, and in fact in the 1990s I served a term on City Council representing Ward 2. And at that time, the city staff came forward with a proposal for an apartment building to house homeless people in Ward 2. And there were a number of the immediate neighbors in that area who were very afraid of what this might mean for their neighborhood, and were very vocal, coming forward, expressing what their various fears were about, who was going to live there, what was the impact going to be on the neighborhood, was it going to be safe for their children, all kinds of things like that. I took a look at, of course, the plans and the ideas for how it was going to be managed, and sort of that whole picture. And when I looked at that, I felt very comfortable that this was going to be a well-managed and well-maintained apartment building, and I voted in favor of it, which did not make me very popular with the people in my ward, at least those who were opposed to it, because in fact the majority were in support of it, as expressed through a petition that was circulated in that neighborhood. I commend the people who were initially opposed to it for having come forward later, after that apartment building was in their neighborhood and up and running, that they came forward and they said, you know what, all those things that we feared really didn't turn out to be the case. I also want to tell the story that happened a few years later when I was no longer on City Council, and when the church across the street from me came to the city asking for a variance to build an addition onto their church because their congregation was growing. The variance was because it was going to bring that building to a much higher density than was allowed in that residential neighborhood. I and a few of my neighbors came forward, and we were the ones opposing it. And that was not, projecting fears for the future. We were already dealing with problems of the traffic from the church when there were church events. I had incidents where a churchgoer would park their car in my driveway behind my car, blocking me in. We had people trespassing on our lawn. I came home one day to find a couple of churchgoers sitting on lawn chairs in my front lawn. So these were existing problems. We weren't afraid about the future. We were saying there are existing problems already, and if the variance is given, we only see those getting worse. I am proud to come forward today and say that those fears did not materialize, and in fact, after the variance was given, that things actually got better, because through that process, the church heard us. I got a letter of apology from one of the people who had been sitting on a lawn chair in my lawn. And the church really pulled together its own plans and figured out how to regulate traffic and parking on those days when there were church events going on. And so actually things got better for us after that variance was granted. So I just wanted to share those two stories of, you know, being on either side of where you're sitting now. And I hope that you'll think through what the plan is before you and its merits, because Hope Village really does promise to address a critical need within our community.
Thank you for your input.
Hello, my name is Esther Pat. I've come here also to speak in support of the Hope Village. I imagine you either read the newspapers or watching TV news and caught the headlines of this weekend's news that homelessness is at an all-time high in the United States. In the last 12 months, the number of homeless people has increased 12%. Rising rents are the main cause of it, which has always been the cause of homelessness. The Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development said the data underscore an urgent need to support proven solutions that help people quickly exit homelessness and to prevent homelessness in the first place. Hope Village is one of those solutions. There's also a very, very critical need in our community for wheelchair accessible housing. Actually, just for wheelchair accessible housing to start with, and that is affordable. Even though it's now been 32 years since federal law has required that all new multifamily housing include wheelchair accessible units on the first floor, there is no law that requires landlords to hold those units open for people with disabilities. Most of those apartments are still too expensive for lower income people. And as I'm sure you've noticed, most of the new construction of multifamily housing has been in the campus area, where apartments lease out 10 to 11 months before lease start date. So the chance of people with disabilities getting into housing, that the few units that are available for people with disabilities, the chances are very poor. And there are still, to this day, people under the age of 40 living in nursing homes, because once they are disabled and in the home and they don't need nursing home treatment anymore, they can't be released until they have an address, and they cannot find an affordable place to live. It's a terrible thing. Even more terrible is the fact that I've lived in this community 50 years, and every single effort to provide housing for homeless people has been met with bigotry. The completely irrational belief that once a person becomes homeless, they become bad and they will be lousy neighbors. Please do not let that attitude drive your decision making. I served on the city council with Maria Ryan when the homestead apartments were built 28 years ago. A small handful of people in the downtown neighborhood formed the Downtown Neighborhood Association for the purpose of, initially, of combating this outrage that the city of Urbana was going to dump, and this is the language they use, dump 35 homeless people in the neighborhood who they would have to take care of. I tried very nicely to explain to people, you don't have to take care of anyone. All you have to do is don't object, and the program will take care of them. Tried pointing out that they will not be homeless people. This is going to be a 35-unit apartment building. Once they have apartments, they aren't homeless anymore. But logic does not stand up to bigotry. Never. It tries, but it doesn't succeed. The good news, as Maria told you and Danielle Chenoweth told you, the happy ending of the Homestead Corporation story is that for a quarter of a century now, we have had that housing. All but one of the people who complained to us approached council members within the first year after that apartment building filled to tell us they were sorry, that we were right and they were wrong, because nothing bad has ever happened. And y'all know it's just an apartment building on Grigg Street. But one bad thing did happen, And that was because of the neighbors' protests, then Mayor Satterthwaite cut the project back from 35 units to 25 units. And every single time I read any reports from the city or something in the paper about the one night the count of how many people are homeless on any one night in Urbana or in Champaign County, every night for the last quarter century and every night for the next quarter century, whatever that number is, it is 10 more people who are homeless than would have been if the city had not responded to protesters who were wrong, who were just afraid of something that wasn't real and that never materialized. And I don't mean to insult, I see the names of some of the people from the Carver Park neighborhood. These are people I know and who have done good things for years, but I guarantee you if you just ignore their complaints that medically fragile people are going to be a burden on their society and their community, I beg you, you will see that, all right, if you will ignore these Champaign residents' insistence that you develop nothing north of them, because I'm telling you, there's nothing lower density you will ever come up with, that anyone could come up with, than what this is. And if they don't want that, you just need to say, just do it, and they will see, I guarantee you that every one of them will see exactly what the people in the Downtown Neighborhood Association saw, was that their objection was not, it had no basis. Thank you very much.
For the input, and reminder, if we could please keep comments on the issues and not about others' comments or towards other members of the audience. Thank you. If you'd please state your name, and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Yes. Good evening, distinguished council members. My name is Reverend Terrence L. Thomas, and I'm the pastor of Bethel AME Church in Champaign. At the request of some of my members who live and reside in Urbana, I'm here to offer some thoughts around the Hope Village situation. I've tried to stay out of the public discourse regarding this topic for a long time, but again, considering I have members who live and work in Urbana, they asked me to come and offer some thoughts. When I first learned the Hope Village project, I was strongly suspicious of the project and leaned heavily against it. Part of the reason for this position was that I believed then, and to an extent I believe now, this project didn't fully and properly engage the community writ large where it will be placed. Sure, things were posted and notices placed in accordance with the law, but at least from where I sit, there was no direct communication with key stakeholders in the community. For example, during my time as president of the Ministerial Alliance of Champaign, Urbana and Vicinity, never was there an invitation to sit down and talk about this project. I'm unsure why this happened, but it needs to be said, if I'm going to be just, that certain inferences could be drawn from this action and not positive inferences at the least. With this lack of communication, I had to investigate what the project was, and with some conversations with people for and against this project. With their help and thoughts from both sides, I discerned that while the communication of this project was not the best, the project itself was something that warranted exploration and support. As a Christian minister whose entire faith and theological framework is grounded in justice according to the Bible that I hold canon, I cannot in good conscience stand against a homeless shelter or any facility there to serve the least of these, let alone those who we have identified as medically vulnerable. As a former hospital chaplain, so I'm speaking on the ground floor and someone who's been on the front lines, as a former hospital chaplain who has worked in 2 trauma centers, one on the south side of Chicago and Carl here, I cannot tell you the number of times we had to discharge patients who did not have stable or suitable housing and continued medical care. Those often were our returning and revolving patients in the ER, thereby holding up the ER, making it crowded, harder to serve, etc. We can distrust the parties at the table. And let us be clear, the history between Carl, the University of Illinois, and the Black community is not the best. We can distrust the parties at the table, and given the history with good cause, but what we cannot do is allow that distrust to leave a vulnerable population, many of which are Black and brown. So while we keep talking about the Black community, et cetera, this population is largely Black and brown, literally out in the cold to die. Let me put on my political science hat for a moment. One of the most nefarious things about white supremacy is the ways in which it others people and creates the illusion that somehow we are better than others rather than seeing the ways we intersect. It convinces us that we are better based on our class, our history, our theology, our ties to the space historically. Or to put it another way, it has one group of marginalized folks, Black folks in Urbana, thinking they are better than another group of marginalized folks based off of things such as class or whether or not you have stable housing. We cannot do the work of oppression by bringing harms to others, which opposing this project would do because we think they are less than. Let me illustrate what I'm saying. If you take the language by the opponents of this project and put it side by side with the language of those who resisted integration, you have a facsimile of conversations. Those people would destroy our communities. Those people will bring harm. Those people somehow are criminals. You will literally have the same conversations Bull Connor and the other sheriffs had in the South around this population. Again, as a follower of Jesus Christ, dedicated to justice, I am an openly humanist and liberation theologian. I'm reminded that the world will know me by my love. And this shows up in the world as taking care of the widows, taking care of the sick, the orphans, the homeless, the most vulnerable, those who profess to be Christians. This is what our sacred text says. It also says that my life and how God understands that, my life and how God measures my life will be by how I treated those who are vulnerable. And though none of you may be believers, I don't know. I'm certainly not trying to preach, but I duly want to ask you, do you want it on your conscience that we allow biases and isms to bring harms to those in need? Because they simply don't fit our schisms. Only you can answer that, but I do leave you with this. I implore you to vote yes on Hope Village. Thank you and God bless. And let me say, I felt so strongly about this. It was the lead decision why I didn't seek another term as president in the Ministerial Alliance. I can't sit at the head of a table where we want to damage those who are less than us. Ashe and amen.
Thank you for your input.
Good evening, Mayor Marlin, City Council, and staff. My name is Deshaun Williams. I had a long, drawn-out statement, but a lot of what my thoughts were have already been shared. But I'll leave you with this. Urbana has been at the forefront of many things. Solving homelessness and ending the stigma around it can be yet another beneficial success of our entire community. No one should be left behind. Hope Village addresses the challenges of safe, reliable, and accessible housing for those in our community who need it most. Gone are the days we can simply say that we are a community for all. We have an opportunity to put our words into action. My heart desires to see all members of our community be given access to a better way of living, and I believe that this is the start of that solution. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. State your name and you have 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Michelle Kisio. I work at Homeless Services, but I'm also a citizen of Urbana, and that's why I'm here to speak to you all today. I would urge this council to move forward this proposition for Hope Village. It provides housing to the most vulnerable people that exist in Champaign County and specifically in this city. Black people make up a good majority of who access homeless services. And that also extends to those who are chronically homeless, meaning they've been homeless for a year or longer, and with a disability that impacts them and allows them to not access housing regularly. Those are the most vulnerable people who we work with every day. They have no advocates in this arena. And if we do not house them, we are leaving people to die. And I do mean that literally. I urge you all to really move this forward because we are already facing a housing crisis within our county, but truly we're seeing it affect the people who have no advocates in this arena. So I hope that you all take that into consideration moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your input. Here, please state your name. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, I'm Tequila Wilkes. I am a business owner in Champaign. I own my bare hands, and I work with the homeless services all of the time. So as a business owner, when I first come to towns, usually I go to the homeless shelters and pick out the people who are still able to work, and I offer them daily labor. A lot of the homeless people that we have here are not able to work. They are mentally ill. I'm mentally ill as well, and I went to a place like Hope Village to help me. So I advocate for people who are not just homeless because I've been there, but also for people who are mentally ill. I have been into a situation where I had a nervous breakdown and nobody there to help me, and I didn't have family either. So I called the police and I asked for help, and in this particular community, there was help for me. So the police called out a community services advocate who spoke to me about how I was feeling, and then they put me into mental health, which is just a behavioral health. So in that behavioral health setting, I stayed there for 10 days, and then they shipped me to Mayo Clinic because it was a crisis situation, which means that I was a criminal victim of something. I will say that. I was nervous and I was breaking down all of the time. And although I stand before you now whole, I could not eat. I could not put on my clothes, and I did need help. I did. And there was nobody there to help me, but this program did. They took me off of all the mental health medications that I was on for 10 days, and they reassessed me mentally with the help of Mayo Clinic psychiatrists and psychologists to make sure that I was okay. And then after that, they offered me housing in a place just like Hope Village. It was ran by the hospital, which was called Water Homes in Winona, Minnesota. And that's where I stayed. It had psychiatrists on staff, and it had nurses on staff. And I had my own one-bedroom apartment, and it was paid for through the city. So when I felt better, then I was able to come back home, which is Champaign. I am from Chicago originally, but my family now live here because everybody went to college, and they still live in the community. My mom lived in Bloomington. So this program helped me a lot. I made really good money. I worked for the city of Champaign throughout this whole ordeal. Like when I was breaking down and I was afraid, my pain come from the police department the most. I'm in the police department right now. I'm doing good. And a program like this helped me get there. So I just think that it's important for all communities to start to adapt to programs for people who are mentally ill. And I want you guys to know that it's not just people who are mentally ill to go to these places. If you feel threatened, like somebody's trying to hurt you or kill you, people run to mental health first. And then you go to transitional housing for help because that's a place no one can get to you. Also, if you're going through abuse with your wife or your husband, because either way, it can happen, you go to mental health first, and then mental health puts you in housing based on your mental ability. So this helped me, and it helped a lot of people I know. I do walk people into mental health whole now. And so a lot of the struggle that I see in the community are people who are hardcore on drugs and alcohol, and I invite them into my own house, and the police department do not agree. Because when I call them, I have to have them removed, but it's never a huge situation. I opened up a shelter here in Dobbins Down area that you never hear about. I did. It wasn't a nonprofit. I took the money from my failed deposits, from the work that I do from my bare hand. If somebody cancel a job, that 50% non-refundable deposit, that's what I used to be able to help people get off the street. And also, and as a business owner, I just took that money and put it back there. And it worked. And it wasn't, didn't nobody hear anything when I was putting them in hotels. It was a problem. But when they stayed in the house, nobody knew they was there. We follow rules. We do. And we are safe to communities. But right now, is people outside. Is they downtown outside, they're in front of the city hall building. They're outside in front of this building. That's not where people go. And they can't go nowhere else. So that's why I feel Hope Village is a good place. If it's the community, can the community be moved? Thank you, that's my time.
Thank you for your input.
Hi there, City Council and Mayor. I am sorry that I'm here speaking on a different issue, and I hope that that's all right and that this time is appropriate for that.
Sure. Would you please just state your name for the record?
My name is Ben Johnson. I'm a resident here of Urbana. First, I just want to say that I am inspired by all of the engagement happening here tonight, and I always support housing, and I always support better representation of the people in their communities. So it's a hard issue, and I am inspired by everyone who's participated.
Could you speak into the mic?
Sorry. Now I'm here to talk about the issue that I came to talk to you about today. Thank you. I came before you 2 months ago heartbroken with the loss of life that had been experienced in Israel and Gaza. At that point, about 1,200 Israeli citizens and soldiers had been killed by the October 7th attack that Hamas and other Palestinian militant groups had carried out. Israel had responded and killed about 2,750 Palestinians at that time. I came to you worried about further escalation and told you that I believe that there is a need to call for peace. I emailed you 10 days later, at which point Israel had destroyed over 40% of the homes and killed 7,000 people in Palestine. The need to call for peace was more urgent, and escalation again seemed more likely than resolution. Now, 6 weeks later, the number of dead Palestinian children alone totals around 7,000, while the number of people killed in Palestine has risen to around 19,000. The number of Israeli families these Israeli fatalities is also climbing, with about 105 soldiers killed since the beginning of the ground offensive. Gaza is very small. It's 25 miles long and 6 miles wide. It's about a seventh the size of Champaign County. It's about the space from Rantoul to Savoy. In that space, on average, for the last 70 days, one Palestinian has been killed every 5 minutes. And when we talk about children, that's one child every 12 and a half minutes for the last 70 days in a space the size of 1/7 of our county. The vast majority of housing in Gaza has been destroyed. The vast majority of people are displaced. Recently, the United States went to the UN Security Council and cast the only no vote against a humanitarian ceasefire, which meant that the globe was less able to pressure Israel towards peace. The UN, in an act that is uncommon, then went and took the vote to the whole population of the United Nations, and that motion for ceasefire passed 153 to 10, with the United States casting one of 10 votes against ceasefire. And that ceasefire is that measure is non-binding. Only the UN Security Council can make that vote that is binding. So the United States is crucial in sort of providing space for Israel to keep its offensive going. It's also integral in the ongoing supply of weapons. The U.S. supplies billions of dollars to Israel in military aid every year, and its ongoing offensive is only possible because of continued military aid from the United States government, the tune of billions of more dollars we've given it to continue killing these children and people of Palestine. I urge you to think again about that ceasefire resolution and measure against peace that the city of Urbana passed in 2003 against the Iraq War. I've begun to draft a measure in support with one of my friends, and I'm hoping that I can contact a couple of the other city council members and talk to them about the ongoing tragedy, the United States' role in it, and the role of the finances of, the citizens of Urbana, because I don't want to be complicit in these war crimes. And I think that it is incumbent upon the people of this nation in particular to tell our government, the United States government, that it shouldn't stand in the way of ceasefire. It shouldn't stand in the way of the continued deaths of so many precious lives. I'll be reaching out to you more this week, and I appreciate your time and the time of everybody today.
Thank you for your input. Please state your name. You have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Shay, and I work at Champaign County Healthcare Consumers as a disability application specialist, specifically for homeless individuals or near homeless individuals in our community. Ooh, can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. My job is to help these individuals apply for disability benefits, but generally I do a lot more because the cases are so complicated that a lot of times I creep out of my job duties to extend and provide more support for these individuals. And a lot of times that means working interagency with many of the people that have spoken tonight, such as See You at Home, Cunningham Township, the Continuum for the Continuum Group. I'll leave it at that. It's a long name. But it does take a village to ensure that these people get the care that they need. My clients come from all areas of Champaign and Urbana, including the neighborhoods adjacent to the Hope Village project. Some are already homeless, some are at very high risk of becoming homeless. All have significant disabling conditions. In fact, I currently have some clients from the Carver Park neighborhood, as well as other adjoining neighborhoods. Some live in homes or in the porches of homes where they have no utilities and no water. They have no source of income, and they're suffering from their health conditions. Some used to live in the neighborhoods but are now staying at the Strides shelter in Champaign. I'm making this comment in order to make the point that it's highly likely that some of the residents who will be served at Hope Village will come from the adjoining neighborhoods. Everyone deserves a home where they can feel secure, experience peace, and be able to stabilize their health. Thank you for your consideration.
I'm sorry, we can only have public
know,
input one
I know.
time per person.
Just
per
a
meeting.
rebuttal. Just a rebuttal. No rebuttal? Okay, so
say.
basically, you're gonna let these people attack us as the heavies. Then,
And if a different person would like to speak, please state your name and you'll have up to 5 minutes.
I have a problem with my knees, so if
That's
you don't
fine.
mind, I'd sit down. My name is Jacqueline Curry.
You could just hold the mic so we can all hear you.
My
well.
name is
Thank you.
Jacqueline Curry. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm a proud resident of George Washington Carver Subdivision. My father served over 20 years in the Air Force. My mother and aunties were civil servants of the federal government. I myself have served federal and state government. My brother, husband, son, and countless others contributed not only to Carver Park, but the entire North End. They're turning in their graves right now from years of injustices that have transpired, but not by our choice. Our African American neighborhoods have been plagued for decades with developers taking over our neighborhoods, not only in Champaign, Illinois, but coast to coast. The brave souls who sacrificed their time, blood, sweat, and tears over the years are being disrespected by money-hungry groups scarfing up any and all the land that they can get their hands on. Developers, large entities, find it convenient to step and wipe their feet on our African-American neighborhoods as they prance from project to project, wringing their hands with glee while showing no thoughts of impact for those involved in our areas, along with no remorse. Past practices of developers had the attitude that we, being the neighborhood, show no interest in our neighborhoods, that we could care less or just won't show up. These are assumptions and are the furthest thing from the truth. Carl, U of I, Champaign County healthcare consumers, Champaign and the City of Urbana council members, give or take a very few, or frankly throwing us underneath the bus. Recognition for the good being done for the community as a whole dealing with our homeless issue, yes, it is helping our homeless and the entire community. It's a great and awesome thing, but not at the expense of our North End residents. This is not an option. We're not a piece of dry mucus to be flicked off your fingers at your will and will not be treated as such. Let me reiterate again, as said from the very beginning, we are not against the homeless. We just want some respect, consideration, inclusion, and to be heard and not ignored, as others have said to do. For those who took psychology in school, you may remember that Sigmund Freud made contributions to a well-studied theory. He established a theory that the fight or flight response people engaged in was activated not just by physical threats, but also psychological perception of threat. I'll let that marinate for a minute because at this very moment, after 6+ months of this mess, I am no longer in flight mode, I am in fight mode because this process over the years has become repulsive, old, and I've had enough of this mess. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. And next speaker, hello. You're welcome to.
Say, is there anybody that still wants to talk about Hope Village before I go? Because mine's on a totally different subject. Okay.
Either way, you're welcome to speak in an order, but sure, we can give priority.
My name is Eldris Melinda Carr. And first, I just want to give honor to my God, the Most High God, the one that got us through what we're getting through. And I've been homeless myself. I grew up on Washer Drive in Urbana. And my father lost his job because he was trying to save his home. And when he was trying to buy the house, the person he was buying it from wouldn't give him a chance to take care of the mortgage. So he left his job to try to take care of that. And so to come home from school and see everything on your lawn, I know what it feels like. This is not about the homeless. It's about the process. About how we've been treated. My feelings for the city. It's hard to trust my city, who I expect to help us. Meeting that was held at our church, July 13th. I followed up 3 times with Claudia.
Mike.
One at 9 o'clock. I know you're not saying
Up to the mic.
Don't say names, but I need to say this because it has something to do with what we're talking about. I'm just saying this because I'm saying Hope Village is a great thing. But what has been happening to us is not great. We've been lied to in that very meeting. The question asked, can you tell us how many optional sites? It's private information from a car representative. And then later on, because of my lack of knowledge, I didn't realize the city provided all these sites. I'm like, what? And then it was published in the News Gazette. Imagine how we feel. Notification. You got the letter. A petition was presented. We want to know, did we have a valid protest? The properties. Running around trying to get the information because of the lack of clarity on the 27 properties. And then people who were left out. Then we had the flyers, 1,500. That's what it said in the letter we just got. Thank you, Christopher Evans. So the applicant neither admitted or denied they did in fact distribute 1,500 flyers. There's no evidence to support that. And furthermore, some community members say they received flyers in their mailbox, which is against the law. Some within more than 300 feet didn't even receive a flyer. The November 8th letter, you know, the conflicting information. 2 municipalities involved, requirements and distribution. We had other meetings that were called by people in the community. Mount Olive was mentioned because we weren't getting the information we needed. And then the Champaign, we come here to say, run the Champaign. There may be an agreement that we don't know about floating around somewhere. So do we need legal counsel to help us? Who's supposed to represent us?
So we had 2 officials in the July 13th meeting from the city who knew about the information and said nothing. They said nothing. The principal planner. And another representative, they said nothing. How are we supposed to feel? It's not about the whole village. It's about this process. We're supposed to be able to trust our city to help us. We just came from the Dr. Ellis. And there's some things that have not been revealed from that project. So please let us know where our petition lies, whether it's valid or not. And then we'll know what we need to do next.
Thank you for your input. Please state your name. You'll have up to 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Marion Harrington. To the mayor and all the city councilmen. We of the Carver Park subdivision are not against the homeless. Matter of fact, me, myself, think that the village is all right. We need a place to house the homeless and to take care of the homeless. But I'm glad all these other constituents came before me because it lets me know that what I was thinking is right. This is a homeless community. This is going to be for the homeless. It ain't going to be for the medically fragile because most of the people that are out there, most of them are medically fragile. What is medically fragile? Tell me that. What is medically fragile? I serve at the soup kitchen every Wednesday, and I see homeless people and medically fragile people come through here all the time to get food. So I know what you're talking about. What we're really talking about is the access to Hope Village. Build Hope Village. Build Hope Village. House the homeless. Take care of the homeless. That's great. But don't access it through our neighborhood. That's all we're asking. Your address is at Federal Drive. Come through Federal Drive. And you can't tell me with all these organizations that we have in here, we can't make that work. If they're so concerned about the homeless, well, be that concerned about the needs and wants of the neighborhood. Nobody in here has said anything about us. It's like we don't even matter. We don't even matter. What we come up here and state, what I'm saying here is just going from ear to ear and back out the door. We just don't want it to access through our neighborhood. Build Hope Village. That'd be great. But your address is Federal Drive. No, you heard me say this before. Come through Federal Drive. See, I know what's going to happen. The reason you want to come through Carver Drive is not for the employees. It's not for the ambulances and the fire truck. It's for the foot traffic that you got all over the community to come through there. You want to make it easy for them. And it's not going to be easy for them. We just want you to use your Federal Drive access and don't come through our neighborhood. We want to preserve our neighborhood and keep the access on Federal Drive. Stop saying that we're against this project. Stop saying that we're against the homeless, because we're not. I deal with them all the time. Listen to what we're asking. We just don't want you to access our neighborhood. And that could be done. Goodwin Extended. You ever thought about Goodwin Extended? Goodwin's sitting right there. You can extend it and go right on through there. If the city of Urbana wants to help the homeless, build a street. If the city of Urbana wants to help the homeless, come through Federal Drive and not through our neighborhood. This is Champaign and Urbana. We live in Champaign. Why are you trying to access an Urbana project through Champaign Street? Hey, listen to us. And that's what we're asking. We're not against the project. Well, I'm all for it because they need a place to reside. They need to come off Washington and Market Street. That's what you're after. That's what you're after. Another place to house them. You drive by there all the time, now you see this. Well, let's hide them back in the back there, back in the black neighborhood. Let's access it through our neighborhood. No, access it through Federal Drive. That's your address. And I think some of us will be all right. That's all we're asking. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Next speaker, if you please state your name, you have up to 5 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Babatunde Amao, and I'm here this night to address the Urbana City Council on behalf of my client that had to go attend to his wife that had a seizure attack. So I'll be reading this out on behalf of Brandon Michelle. Dear Urbana Planning, Dear Urbana City Council members, I request that you please read my comment into the public record. My wife and I, been homeless for a long time. We lost our housing after my car broke down and I couldn't get to my job anymore. One thing led to the other. We lived on the street, literally on the street, and sometimes in cars, and every now and then we stayed in a hotel. My wife has several bad conditions, including sometimes something wrong with her heart. She also has a condition called chiara malfunction, where her brain literally sinks down into her spine column. She gets dizzy, falls easily, and she has several seizure disorders. She is waiting to have a brain surgery currently. We cannot stay at shelter. We cannot stay at any shelter because we would split up and my wife need me to help her every time. So we had no choice than to stay on the streets. I can tell that Hope Village is really something that our community needs. In our time on the streets, we saw many people who were sick and disabled. We really need this help with permanent housing and all the services given right to them at Hope Village. The people we met were nice, and we all tried to help each other, but without a home and without the services that people need, there is not very much we can do for each other. Recently, we've been fortunate to be able to stay in a hotel. Just being in a hotel, my wife's seizures has been cut into half. The calm and the peace and being able to be indoor in our own room has helped her a lot. The people who are out there who don't have housing and healthcare and all the other help that Old Village will provide really needs our support. So thanks for your consideration, Brandon Michelle. So this is from my client, but I think I should read this very short Bible verse because I've had people here that are pastors, reverends, and elders. So Matthew 25, verse 31 to 40 says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." For those of us here this night that are Christians or believe in one thing or the other, that call on the name of the Lord, this is a clarion call to actually do what we preach, to actually ask ourselves that question: what would Jesus do? Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Next speaker, if you please state your name, you've got up to 5 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Darlene, and I've been listening all evening. I've been involved in this project since the beginning, and I've heard and seen a lot. I've experienced a lot. I've read a lot. Now, what I've heard this evening is Build Hope Village, okay? And none of these people live in my neighborhood. They know nothing about what will be experienced from these people, okay? Now, it may be a good project, but first, let me remind you, we never said do not build Hope Village. I have yet to hear someone say, well, we have this land over here. If it's gonna bother them that much, can we put it over here? Okay, these are homeless people, and what I'm listening to is build the homeless shelters for the homeless. Do you realize this is not going to be just for any homeless people? This is going to be for the medically fragile, which has not been completely defined for us, okay? We've asked many questions. We have not got those answers. Now, second of all, I've heard build Hope Village, but I have not heard anyone say, let's get behind what's causing this homelessness. We are not getting to the root problem of this. You are just escaping on the surface. You got a lot coming down here. We have immigrants coming in. Urbana is a sanctuary city. Chicago already said, we turn them back. We're sending them downstate. This is a sanctuary state. You have AI coming in, which is going to take a lot of jobs. You have rent increases. You are going to steadily have a bunch of homeless people. You are only scratching the surface. Let's get behind what's causing this homelessness. Are we going to present a bill to say, okay, Prisca, let's bring down this rent? I have been out in the neighborhood, and I've talked to people in the Douglas Square apartments that's for the low income is half empty because one lady I spoke to said that her rent had went over $900 a month and she could not afford it. So we're steady gonna have homeless. This is only 30 tiny houses. Are you getting ready to at least put some somewhere else? Because you're gonna need a lot of these. I have not heard anyone say, let's do something about what's causing this problem. You are trying to fix problems that you're steadily creating. We need to get on one accord and get the root problem solved. Just to build these 30 tiny homes is a great thing. It's a great start. But I look at a lot of other things that's going on around Champaign-Urbana too. And again, I'm gonna say, each person that demanded this village be built does not live nowhere near that area. You may know somebody up there, true enough, but you don't know me. Now, we also have to understand that there's a certain amount of respect that goes to this, okay? We are human just like you. I think just like you. My life is lived in accordance. That you live the same life. That tomato in that store that costs $3.99 a pound for me costs the same thing for you. We all live in this society together, and we're gonna have to all pull together in order to sustain this community. The entire Champaign-Urbana area need to be glorified. Not just one section and not just what you want. We were approached with the fact saying that this is the way this is gonna be, and this is the way you're gonna have to accept it. And that is not right, okay? Everything starting from the notification process all the way down through has been, to me, deceptive. I did go in, I have read the proposal, the comprehensive plan, more than one time. And we have a lot more work to do to just build 30 tiny homes.
Thank you for your input. If anyone else would like to address the committee of the whole, now is the last calls.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, I need 20 years. The blood of Jesus. I'm Reverend Dr. Evelyn B-Boy Underwood. I've lived in Urbana, Champaign for 70 years, at least. And I'm so tired. But I love my community. I love the people here. And lest I better get started because they've started on me. There's so much that I need to say. But the first thing, the 18 sites. The 18 sites. And I know what happened with the process. 18 sites. I don't know where the other ones are. I think some information finally came out. But why did they choose? I heard and I've read the pretext. But I know we were the least resistance, a vulnerable community. That's what was said at the December 7th Planning Commission meeting and other meetings. But that was said by the professionals who was appointed to do a job by the mayor with the consent of the council. And from what and from what I understand, from the meetings that I was able to attend because of illness, I wasn't able to go, but I was listening to a lot of people who did go. But the meeting I went to, they were trying to do a job without information. They weren't even given the information. They weren't even given the information. Look at the video. December the 7th. Look at it. It's on your website. I told the people yesterday, and I had it announced, look at the video. I said those people of valor was trying to do a job with their feet cut off because they weren't given the information. And one question, how did we get here? How did we get here without doing what procedurally was supposed to have been done? Because we, a vulnerable community, George Washington Carver, now if you know your history, you know who he was. At this court, Dory Miller, read your history. Respect all people. Dr. Martin Luther King said that. Don't try to disrespect. It's not going to work. Like I preached on yesterday on radio. I can't remember what I preached, Bishop, what I preached. It was about David and Goliath and the 5 smooth stones. What I've seen these people come to all the meetings and try to talk, and even when the press was there, the media, they didn't want to hear. The community, one lady, she said, all I'm trying to do, I don't have education. I got 5 kids. I'm concerned about my kids playing around that detention or retention. They said both ways in there. I have to ask Brother Rob and Brother Terry and Bishop, because I don't know the difference between detention and retention. One's supposed to have water or something, but it's dangerous. And I think somebody's called it a nuisance, an attractive nuisance. And you know kids going to try to get anything. They're going to end up killed. Just like now what's going on up there, the infrastructure. And we told Champaign, the people here told Champaign City Council when they ran us over there, they felt the lawyer got up there. We can't. And my husband's not a lawyer. He sent me to law school. And he said, now this doesn't sound right what he's saying. And he gave some, I said, man, you go with that analysis. Talking about analysis, I saw some pretty language, but what is the analysis? Where's the critical thinking? Just because everybody gonna sign a letter because the big shots want to do this and they are members of that. Is it over already?
Yes, I'm so sorry, Reverend Underwood, that's the 5 minutes. Feel free to email the rest of your comments if you'd like.
Is that everybody from Hope Village?
Yep, and you can go ahead on any topic. Yep. If you'd state your name, and you have 5 minutes, Joanne, whenever you're ready.
Oh, hello, okay. Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Joanne Buddy, and I represent the residents of Behringer Commons. Jeff, do you want to hand out that, or did you already hand it out, the stuff? I have copies for everybody. I sent you all emails yesterday, but in case you didn't have a chance to read it, I'm handing out copies again of an email I sent you yesterday. And so I agree with a lot of people from Hope Village. If some reason you just can't fight bureaucracy in this city, and it's been a real eye-opener for me. In your city council procedures and orientation, you have an excerpt that says, role in adjudicatory proceedings and public hearings before city council. And it says, occasionally the city council acts in an administrative or adjudicative capacity. In its administrative adjudicatory capacity, the city council considers recommendations made by certain city commissions, in other words, Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Historic Preservation Commission, which will directly affect the rights of one or more specific property owners. I'm asking you to exercise your administrative adjudicatory capacity and review the ZBA case 2023-C-05 for a self-storage facility at 205 North High Cross Road. This conditional use permit was denied at the ZBA meeting on October 18th, but the developer asked for an appeal and was told he was not eligible for an appeal. I believe his attorney may have threatened the city with a lawsuit, and in order to mitigate the basis of a lawsuit, the city attorney recommended a reconsideration of the motion so the ZBA could insert their findings of fact. A motion to reconsider has to be made at the same meeting at which the original motion was made, so it did not qualify for a reconsideration. A ZBA member made a motion to reopen the case and basically start all over. That too is not allowed unless new evidence has come to light that needs to be considered. No such new evidence was presented. The reopening of the case was held December 13th, and the board clearly did not listen to our arguments or the arguments made by some other board members. Joanne Chester, a zoning board member and a former county tax assessor, agreed with the homeowners that our property values would go down if an industrial unit went in next door to us. Nobody listened to her. And how can it not affect property values when this is what they're proposing to go in, and this is how close it will be? It's going to go in this lot right here, and this is our closest condominium to it. Like, it's literally 20 feet away. So how can you say that this will not affect property values? The vote was taken as follows: 4 in favor of the motion and 2 abstentions and 1 against. When the chair of the ZBA asked how to handle abstentions, the city attorney incorrectly advised them that abstentions count with the majority, so they ruled that the motion passed 6-1. Votes of abstention can be counted with majority in the city council, but not in the ZBA. So the vote was invalid and incorrectly recorded as approved. They needed 5 votes in support. They only had 4. The motion failed to pass, even though it was recorded in error as approved. We are still waiting to find out how the city plans to rectify their invalid and incorrect vote. The staff has misled us, lied to us. When we asked them directly before the first hearing if there was any way to stop it, they lied to us and said there's nothing you can do, it's already been approved. It had not been approved, maybe by the staff. They did not tell us that we could stop it by signing a petition. We've filed several FOIA requests, and all we've gotten back is like general public stuff that we already knew, that like our comments to them and minutes of meetings, and we are still waiting for the information, and one wonders what it is that they don't want us to see. This application has been recommended twice by the planning staff and voted on twice by the ZBA and failed both times. This is where you are allowed to get involved in an administrative or adjudicative capacity. We believe that this will negatively impact our property values and the saleability of our homes and vacant lots. We have evidence that this will happen. We have a letter from a realtor who was trying to sell a condominium right after the first meeting, and just with the idea of a self-storage facility in their backyard, 2 people refused to make an offer. The condominium eventually sold, but for $35,000 or 14% less than the asking price. We fear the developer, based on the ZBA's incorrect decision the other night, will consider this permit approved and will finalize purchase of the lot or order storage units to place on the lot. We want some branch of local government to stop that from happening. Since this recommendation by the planning staff and ZBA will directly affect the rights of many property owners, we respectfully ask you to act in your administrative and adjudicative capacity and vote to deny this conditional use permit at 205 North High Cross Road. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Is there anyone else who would like to give public input for the committee of the whole? Seeing none in the audience, I have a few emails to read and some of our remaining time. As stated earlier, we'll do 3 minutes for each email. If the clerk can help me with the 3 minutes. Also, thank you to the clerk for keeping record that we did get 21 emails on this topic. Most were not expressly written as public input or asked to be read into the record. The ones that were explicitly listed as public input for the date will be included in the meeting minutes. If you sent us an email without that and you did want it in the minutes, you can resend it and we could get it in the committee, the council, the next meeting, right? Like a future meeting, not this one. You could send them. Oh, all right. I may be giving you bad advice. Maybe, sorry, someone can clarify if that's not the case. But yes, put the input and the dates and we'll include it in the record. First email is, I'm writing in strong support of Hope Village and would like my comments read into the record. I have urged the mayors of both cities to consider a small house development like this, and I'm very pleased that a coalition has finally been put together to make this happen. I had a dear friend who suffered from a myriad of health problems, and if he had been able to find comfort and shelter in a small home like this, like those being proposed, he might still be with us today. Others who need the support walk down our streets every day. A place to call home, food to eat, and health care when you need it should be rights, not privileges. And those of us privileged to be able to afford those things should step up and make them possible for all our citizens. I can't think of any way I'd rather see our city spend money than this, and I hope the council will support it unanimously. Carolyn Baxley. Next email, dear council members. I urge you to give final approval to complete the Hope Village development. This unique collaborative community program is a step toward ending chronic homelessness in our community. I respectfully request that this be read into the record. Sincerely, Julie Louch, Urbana. Next email. My name is Linda Turnbow, and I am writing to express my support for Hope Village. I serve on the board of the Housing Authority of Champaign County as a resident advisor. I also live in one of the neighborhoods adjacent to the Hope Village site. I strongly support Hope Village because I know that people need this housing. We need more permanent supportive housing for individuals who are medically fragile and who have experienced chronic homelessness. Hope Village will have 30 homes. It is not a massive development like what we could end up with on that property. In 2019, there was a proposed development that would have added hundreds of apartments on that property. Any one of us can become homeless. All it takes is one disaster or one brain injury or maybe losing a loved one who provided a home. Homeless people all come from somewhere. They used to live in some neighborhood, including my neighborhood and other neighborhoods around the Hope Village site. But because they do not have an address, who will represent them? What plan commission member will represent them? What city council member will represent and support them? Homeless people are human beings like the rest of us, and housing and health care are both basic human rights. Hope Village will provide for both of those rights for the most vulnerable among us. Also, they should not have to live in some industrial or commercial area. Their housing should be adjacent to residential areas because it is housing, not an industrial or commercial enterprise. That is just good planning. Hope Village will not hurt our neighborhood, and it was not dumped in our neighborhood. It is a legitimate residential development that will provide permanent homes. No neighborhood homes are being torn down, and Hope Village is not a shelter or transitional housing with a lot of turnover of residents. There are many transitional housing homes and permanent supportive services homes throughout Champaign-Urbana in various neighborhoods, and they have not harmed those neighborhoods or the residents who live in those neighborhoods. But there is no adequate permanent supportive housing for the most vulnerable who are homeless, those who are medically fragile. Hope Village will provide that, and it is desperately needed, and I am in support of it. Sincerely, Linda Turnbill. Next email, dear representatives, I'm writing to express my strong support for Hope Village, and I would like my message to be read into the record. The lack of affordable housing in this community has had a tremendous effect on many of our residents who lack a safe, warm, and protected place to lay their heads at night. Hope Village will not solve every problem, but it is an important start. We cannot continue to avert our eyes and delay finding solutions. Hope Village is not just a good idea, it is a moral imperative. Best regards, Maggie Etine. Sorry for pronunciation. Next email. Good evening. My name is Charlene Murray, Community Relations Coordinator at Stride Shelter. Strides operates a low-barrier shelter for the unhoused, which, as it states, simply means that we lower many barriers as possible in order to serve as many people as possible. As the community is aware that one of our main priorities is to get and keep people off the streets, we are often the recipient of drop-offs from the police department, mental health facilities, outreach teams throughout the community, and from hospitals. Prospective guests coming from hospitals are typically more vulnerable and therefore would qualify for an emergency cot with strides pending availability. However, due to medical fragility that oftentimes prevents individuals from independently caring for themselves, it sometimes feels like we are doing a disservice. We have no trained staff or nurses to care or care coordinators who are equipped to handle some of what we see. We are often a last resort for many individuals, and if we opt not to accept them, which would be appropriate, we would be putting them out on the street, which literally defeats our purpose. On a nightly basis, due to bed availability, we're turning away anywhere from 5 to 15 people, and on extreme weather nights, even more. We have never not had a wait list since opening. If we were able to move our medically fragile individuals into facilities like Hope Village, we would be able to open up more beds at night, thereby having to turn away fewer people. This won't solve the problem of homelessness, but it would sure bring us a lot closer than where we are now, and would also put us in the position to serve a greater number of people as a shelter and as a community. Essentially, those in the Hope Village neighborhood are contributing to our bottom line of getting and keeping unhoused people off the streets. This is something to be proud of as an American, not to be fearful of, not to be ashamed of, not to be dissatisfied about. We have experienced too many deaths from folks sleeping outside in dangerous weather over the years, and the shelter has already seen our first cases of frostbitten hands and feet this year. Morally, we can no longer shake our heads and say, not in my backyard. Cliche, but if not here, then where? If not now, then when? Even with the addition of Hope Village, we are still indebted as a community to the devastating number of people who need facilities like ours just to stay alive. We go into work on a daily basis, selflessly dedicating our time, resources, and individual missions to the most vulnerable individuals in our community. On a daily basis, we see people at their worst, and we work tirelessly to ensure their safety, respect, and dignity. We have heard the issues of the community, but we have also heard viable alternative solutions. Hope Village is a solution to a problem that's bigger than the neighborhood they're looking to place it in. It's part of a solution to a multifaceted problem, and quite frankly and simply, we are in dire need of your support. That was from Charlene Murray. The rest will be in the record. Next email is from Warren Charter, Honorable Mayor Diane Marlin, and the Urbana Plan Commission. I'm writing to you on behalf of Hope Village Project with unwavering, strong support. The Hope Village Project is a long overdue community need that fills a void providing services to our most vulnerable homeless population, services that are not currently provided by other agencies. I've heard that opportunity to provide street-level outreach to our homeless population for 10 plus years in Champaign-Urbana community. My nonprofit Street Outreach Movement is a 501c3 focused on our most vulnerable homeless, the unhoused population living rough on the streets, often dealing with significant health challenges that have made them very medically fragile. The Hope Village fills a needed gap, serving the homeless that are not suited for an independent or congregate housing solution. From my experience, those homeless that need a higher level of one-on-one care to manage mental health or chronic health care are often not accepted into our community's existing congregate homeless shelter. As a longtime advocate of housing first approach to ending homelessness, this housing first approach is not found in our existing emergency shelter and transitional housing. Hope Village is a class by itself, as it has been designed and programmed to provide a true housing-first approach for this unsheltered sector of our homeless. The ability to provide street outreach to this population, then move them directly into their own private secured housing unit, enabling them to begin working on their specific life challenges, offers many community benefits. Without the Hope Village project, my concern is that we will continue to see our high-risk, chronic homeless not finding life-changing solutions, yet continuing to be stuck in the cycle of utilizing first responders and emergency room services to survive yet another day on the street. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, Warren Charter, Street Outreach Movement, Inc. And next, last email. Dear City of Urbana Plan Commission members, Mayor, and City Council members, I am writing this letter on behalf of Promise Healthcare in support of the Hope Village project. Promise Healthcare is a federally qualified health center, and we operate the historic Francis Nelson Health Center along with 3 other locations in Champaign County. We also operate a comprehensive dental program previously known as the Smile Healthy Dental Program. At Promise Healthcare, our providers see the desperate need for Hope Village. We serve many patients who are experiencing chronic homelessness and who are medically fragile with a variety of serious health conditions. We see that these patients stay in the shelters that cannot accommodate their significant needs, or worse, they stay on the streets to a continued detriment of their health. Living rough in shelters or on the streets is detrimental to a body's health, and the longer a person is living rough, the more their health declines. We have partnered with Stride Shelter and Rosecrans Center in providing needed services and will continue to do so with many community agencies that support assistance for our homeless populations. The percentage of homeless patients that we serve has been growing for the past 5 years. Last year, more than 15% of our patients served reported being homeless. We anticipate we serve even more than this, but the patients do not report this because of the stigma associated with being homeless. This population is often shunned by society and large segments of the healthcare system. Promise Healthcare supports the concept of housing is healthcare. In 2019, the National Healthcare for the Homeless Council released a position paper stating that housing is healthcare. In part, the paper stated the primary and essential function of housing to provide a safe and sheltered space is absolutely fundamental to a person's health and well-being. The health effects of homelessness are grave, with higher incidence and severity of illness and injury among people experiencing homelessness. As healthcare providers, we are aware of the shortened lifespan of individuals who experience chronic homelessness. Chronic conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, and heart attacks are almost twice as prevalent among people experiencing homelessness than in the general population. Depression is 6 times as prevalent. Lacking stable housing makes treating every condition more difficult and further damages health. People who die on the streets, on average, live roughly 30 fewer years than the U.S. life expectancy, and the age-adjusted death rate of the homeless population is at least twice that of the general population. People experiencing homelessness access primary care less frequently because they are often uninsured and have experienced marginalization and stigma by healthcare organizations, resulting in their more frequent emergency department use and presentation with comorbid conditions that are more acute because they have been untreated. That was Jennifer Henry, Chief Executive Officer. And I believe that was all the emails that we have that were asked to be read aloud, unless there's some that were forgotten.
I think there's one that came in at 6:50 from Lincoln Evans that hasn't been read, unless
Sure.
I
You want
missed
to take it?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Says, Dear Urbana City Council members, I would like my message read into the meeting. My name is Lincoln. I live in Urbana Ward 2, and I'm writing to urge you to support Hope Village by approving the Hope Village Plan Unit development. We need more permanent housing for our most vulnerable community members. Hope Village is a groundbreaking initiative that aims to address the critical gap in housing for medically fragile individuals experiencing chronic homelessness. With 30 tiny homes and a community center, Hope Village represents a vital step towards providing permanent supportive housing for this vulnerable population. The development is designed with a trauma-informed approach, creating a welcoming and healing environment for residents. By supporting this initiative, we provide shelter and affirm the belief that housing is healthcare. Please consider the significant impact Hope Village can make in our community. The collaboration between CCHCC, Carl, and UIUC demonstrates a collective commitment to improving the lives of our most vulnerable residents. Our community has the power to drastically improve the lives of many. Please approve the Hope Village Plan Unit development and contribute to the well-being of those who need it most. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Lincoln.
Thank you. Any other emails that were asked to be read that we missed? Okay, and then that will...
As a point of order to clarify to earlier comments, public input is received in a variety of ways as outlined in the public input guidelines, which are attached to all City of Urbana agendas. They can be found on our website. It is a single PDF. If you scroll past the last page of the agenda, you will find the public input guidelines, which outlines how input is recorded into the meeting record explicitly.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And with that, we'll conclude our public input session. And next item on the agenda is staff report.
We're going to have an update from Will in just a sec about council goals, mayor council goals. First, I just want to remind folks that this is the last meeting in 2023 for the city council. The city council will reconvene on January 2nd as there will be a rescheduled meeting of the council, and then there will also be a committee of the whole that night. And the city itself will be closed for the holidays on December 25th, December 26th, and January 1st. And then Will has his update.
All right, so I'll try to be brief. So I have a quick update.
Is your mic on, and
all right,
just be
it's
nice and
on,
close and
but,
loud? Thank you.
Very, very close. So I have a very quick update for the council goal setting next steps. We sent out a doodle poll with everyone's availability. No date that we sent out was perfect. Of the dates that we sent out with the facilitators' availability, Thursday, February 1st is the best date, although no date had everyone available. So as long as that date, if we're willing to proceed with that date, what we can do is I will send out all the action items that we've landed on, send that out in a survey form similar to what we did in ARPA with a yes with revision, no, and then we can use that as the basis for that facilitated discussion on February 1st. So that's kind of the easiest path forward, unless we want to, if we want to stick with the facilitator at this point. So.
Yeah, Jaya, go ahead.
Is that starting at 6?
We haven't set the times explicitly for that one because there was some time difference availability, and it'd probably be a 2 to 3 hour session, and I think the doodle poll was 6 to 9, so we could probably massage it based off of availability.
Yeah, I'll just share that the earliest I'll be available that day is at 7, and I did share that with Kate as well. And this is something I think it's important for councils to be able to actively participate in. So I would appreciate an understanding that, as I shared, I work till 7 o'clock every Thursday night, and I have a meeting that would be very difficult for me to move.
And so to clarify, you're saying Thursday, February 1st, undetermined time, but possibly 7?
We'll book a venue for the facilitated discussion as well. So once we have all those little details finalized, I'll send out further clarification and information about it.
Okay. And you said you would send an update from our last session and any other input you've received?
Yeah, so some of at the tail end at the meeting last time, there was talk about sending out a survey similar to ARPA with yes, or ARPA was yes, maybe no. For this one, I think yes for the revision, no for the action items. We left kind of on kind of not an ambiguous, but it wasn't a very neat landing, so I'll try to tidy up some of the discussion notes, and so that way there's a single list for everyone to react to.
Thank you. Yes, Chris, question?
Quick question, Will. I know the answer is no to adding more things to the goals, but can I take something off if I, was there time to still do that?
For the action items?
No, yeah, well, whatever stuff that I gave to you, can I remove something from it?
I suppose, I don't know if on all the individual discussions, I don't know if somebody like that. If we do a survey,
that's true.
People can say no.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Well, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you, staff, for the report. Is there anything else on that?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of the staff report. Next is new business. I appreciate our presenters are ready here, but I do need to call for a 5-minute recess just to take a little break, and we will be back at 9:33. No, yes, 9:33 will be 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we've had our just over 5-minute recess. I'll call us back into order. And if we could please have quiet in the audience for continuing our meeting here. We are back in action under new business, and our first item is ordinance number 2023-12-050, an ordinance approving the final development plan for a planned unit development, plan case 2480 PUD 23 by community development.
Okay. Good evening tonight, council members. I'm going to try and be pretty brief here. I think we've heard a lot about Hope Village, and I think we're pretty familiar with it. So tonight, the action being requested of council is to approve the final development plan for the Hope Village planned unit development. Just a refresher, this site is located in northwestern Urbana. To the south is the Carver Park neighborhood in Champaign. To the north is the industrial area along Federal Drive in Urbana. The Plan Commission reviewed, let me just remind everybody where we're at in the PUD process. So we're at the final PUD, so this is when we get very specific site plans. Those are all listed on the slide here. They're also in your packet. Be happy to discuss any of those later. Okay. The Plan Commission reviewed the final development plan for Hope Village on November 9th and December 7th. And for several reasons that are outlined in your packet, as well as in the meeting minutes, they ultimately recommended that, and I'll quote, city administration continue to work closely with the applicant organizations, the neighborhood residents, including residents of Champaign, the city of Champaign, and others to mitigate the effects of construction and operation of Hope Village. Staff concurs with the Plan Commission recommendation. We ask that council approve the final development plan with two conditions. One, that construction be in general conformance with the attached site plans and ordinance attachment A, and two, that the combination preliminary and final plat is approved in plan case 2479-S-23, which we'll be discussing later. I did want to make a couple of final notes before I conclude. So first, while there's been some discussion surrounding access to the project off of through Federal Drive, after consulting with our city attorney, staff has determined that such a shift is outside of the purview of council. While conditions may be imposed on the site plan, changing the PUD itself without the consent of the applicant is not legally permitted. Also, I feel like since it's been mentioned a couple times, tonight, this site does not have an address off Federal Drive. The buildings will not have an address on Federal Drive. It would have a Carver Drive address if built according to the plans. We do that in plenty of places. Streets cross over city boundaries, and it's not an issue. I have with me tonight Marty Smith and Claudia Lenhoff from the applicant team, and they are here to make some comments at this time. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Got this close enough? Can you hear? Well, Mayor Marlin, City Council members, it's good to be here tonight before you in what is intended to be the final steps in this long evolving journey of Hope Village. First, we'd like to thank you for your partnership and initial support in this sincere effort to bring a unique, permanent, supportive housing solution with access to healthcare services and intensive wraparound casework. Your early support and partnership has really helped move this project along and has provided evidence of support not only locally but also from a state level. We know the road to this final consideration has been long for all parties involved. It's not been easy, to say the least, and we're grateful for the time and consideration all parties have put into moving this project forward. So here we are tonight, seeking approval for the final PUD submittal. The Plan Commission has forwarded this project to you for approval with condition, and I want it to be said here for the record and be very clear that the applicant is not only supportive but very intentional about this consideration to the approval process. It is something that we not only embrace but we have really endeared from the very beginning of the project. Throughout the process, we've undertaken efforts beyond expectation to seek neighborhood and public input. We've hosted 3 neighborhood meetings, a total of roughly 7 hours of direct feedback. We've had numerous discussions, calls, texts, and emails with groups and individuals. In addition, there's been numerous opportunities for public comment before Urbana and Champaign City Councils and other agencies. Significant effort was made in notifying the surrounding neighborhoods of each meeting, and more than 1,500 flyers were distributed door to door by the CCHCC team, exceeding the prescribed requirements of Urbana zoning code and requirements of Urbana staff. Through this evolving process, we have continued to seek neighborhood and community input above and beyond the minimal requirements outlined in the zoning ordinance. And as a result of these meetings, the project team learned of specific concerns which we have been able to address or mitigate with revisions in the final planned unit development before you. There were a number of items that were repeated, 6 to 8 specific concerns, and we've been able to address each of those, and I'd like to just re-point those out again tonight. The first is a traffic concern. We did indeed engage a traffic assessment provided by the engineering firm Clark Dietz. Within that traffic assessment, it was stated, and this is quoted, the proposed development includes 1 community center, approximately 5,000 square feet, and 30 single occupancy residential units, approximately 475 square feet each. The community center is anticipated to have 8 to 10 employees and a parking lot with a maximum capacity of 17 parking spaces. The residential units are designed for occupants without vehicles, but up to 5 resident vehicles are included in the calculations. And based on this information and an analysis utilizing the Institute of Transportation Engineers Manual, the proposed development is anticipated to add 15 vehicle trips to Carver Drive during morning and evening peak hours. The 15 is an important number. I want to make sure that that's heard plain and clearly, because within the current zoning, this site could be developed by right as a multifamily residential complex of nearly 400 units, which would generate substantially higher traffic volumes than the anticipated 15 vehicle trips from Hope Village. Previously, an even larger project was presented to the council, citing over 1,100 parking spaces within that project. Obviously, while a project of this magnitude is not Hope Village's current or future plan, it's important to highlight. One of the other issues that was consistently raised within neighborhood meetings was concern for parking. All Hope Village staff, resident, and visitor parking will be contained on site, and no parking from Hope Village employees, visitors, or residents will be on Carver Drive. Drainage was another consistent concern and issue. Hope Village stormwater and sewer discharge run to the north. Grading of the site all slopes to the north, ensuring no additional drainage issues within the neighborhood. Detention pond, which is required by a project like this to retain and then ultimately send water away. We have a detention pond. This ensures all water will be retained on site and discharged to the north with no impact on the neighborhood. To address the safety concerns raised, we've extended the gated community fencing to bring the detention pond inside Hope Village. It's within the property line gates, and it will not be accessible to anyone without key access. Another concern with the detention pond was mosquitoes from standing pond water. An aerator or fountain will be installed in the pond to keep the water moving and discourage mosquitoes and other insects from landing on the water in a permanent site. Excessive noise from emergency vehicles was expressed as a concern. We entered into discussion with ambulance service and fire department personnel, and we've learned that when making calls to 911, the request can be made to shut off sirens when entering a neighborhood. Construction traffic. In response to specific and numerous concerns from surrounding neighbors, Hope Village, Inc. undertook significant expense to build a temporary gravel drive for all deliveries, construction vehicles, and workers to enter the site from the north end of the project for the entirety of the construction phase. Close proximity to neighbors' homes was a concern. So we pulled the project back farther to the north from the edge of the Carver Drive neighborhood. We created a larger green space with landscape screening to extend the natural buffer between the neighborhood and the site parking. The biggest concern expressed was Carver Drive subdivision's neglected infrastructure. And while Hope Village cannot correct neglected infrastructure or decades-long disrepair within the Carver Drive subdivision, we have been able to leverage Ameren, Illinois to commit to street lighting upgrades and review of the current condition of the distribution infrastructure. Through neighborhood engagement, Hope Village has shown a bright light on the disrepair and unattended maintenance of the streets, sidewalks, and drainage conditions within Carver Park. This has resulted in a commitment by the City of Champaign to scheduled replacement of Dory Miller Drive in the 2025 capital budget and additional attention to current maintenance of the interior streets and sidewalks. Additionally, with application as an organized neighborhood association, Carver Park will be eligible for various neighborhood assistance and grants to improve safety and beautification, such as replacement of the long-awaited subdivision sign, which is in some disrepair. This neighborhood is not wrong in their concern and neglect of the infrastructure within the neighborhood. And again, while Hope Village can't address these specific needs, our project has been able to leverage the interest and the ongoing concern for future repairs. Shared amenities are a benefit that we bring to the subdivision. As Hope Village provides services to the residents, the surrounding neighborhoods will gain access to benefits such as mobile health clinic, fresh produce grocer bus, community events held in the community center, and programs encouraging interaction with Hope Village residents through a neighborhood advisory board. The selected site was a 12-acre parcel of farmland, which the owner would not subdivide but only sell the entire 12 acres as is. While Hope Village anticipated only needing 4 to 6 acres, Carl went ahead and purchased the 12 acres with plans to subdivide and donate to Hope Village the portion needed for the project. This would leave the balance as a separate lot owned by Carl, not Hope Village, available for continued farming or future development compatible with the commercial industrial properties to the north. The application for subdivision separates the 12 acres from north to south, with the south lot, number 101, having access from the 2 public streets, Carver Drive and Dory Miller Drive. These 2 public streets dead end without turnarounds or access back out of the neighborhood, so it can safely be assumed under generally accepted planning principles that these 2 public streets were always intended to be extended as future development occurred. Hope Village has designed the access from Carver Drive, extending into Hope Village with a turnaround to accommodate emergency and maintenance vehicles, eliminating the need to back out of the subdivision. It was decided, with Carver Drive being the shortest, most direct route out of the neighborhood, that this would be the only entrance into Hope Village, leaving Dory Miller closed for access to the north. The north lot 102 would only have access from the public street Federal Drive, while Hope Village to the south will not be contiguous, nor have access to Federal Drive, nor will any future development to the north or west have access to Carver Drive or Dory Miller Drive. This permanently safeguards Carver Park subdivision from any additional traffic in the future. Federal Drive is not conducive as a residential access for the following reasons. It does not meet the criteria in the Urbana zoning ordinance for approval, which states that the proposed development is conducive to the public convenience at that location. It does not provide direct access to a collector or main street, nor nearby access to public transportation and bus service. Heavy commercial truck traffic and lack of sidewalks on Kenyon Road present safety concerns for Hope Village resident, pedestrian, and bike traffic. Significantly longer response time for emergency vehicles opposed to Carver Drive. Residential conflicts with the existing charter bus, express delivery, distribution, and industrial businesses is another reason why Carver Drive is not an acceptable access point. Federal Drive, I'm sorry. As a reminder, Hope Village will provide permanent supportive housing. Therefore, the residents will no longer be homeless and deserve the same respect, consideration, and safety as anyone renting or owning a home. Additionally, zoning codes are not written to regulate who, but they are written to regulate what, where, and how. It's been suggested that residents of Hope Village, which is an immediate neighbor to Carver Park subdivision and is situated immediately at the extension of Carver Drive, be forced to enter their homes from a different point than their immediate neighbors. Forcing access off Federal Drive would require residents to head down Lincoln Avenue, turn into Killarney, weave around past the hotels onto Kenyon Road, which is the main route for heavy industrial traffic with narrow passage and no sidewalks. Then turn onto Federal Drive, heading all the way back south to the edge of the existing Carver Park subdivision, in essence, being forced to enter their home from the rear door instead of the front door. What may appear to be biased treatment may easily be dismissed as poor optics, but in my opinion, does not send a message of diversity, equity, and inclusion that we all support and strive for in this community. Your overwhelming support tonight for the Hope Village project will be the necessary step needed to bring the first permanent supportive housing community to Urbana-Champaign, and will serve as a model for other communities that we can all be proud of. In spite of the time and interest of your all time, we do have the design team here. We're glad to answer any questions related specifically to the design of the site, as well as Claudia here on any operational issues.
Thank you for the presentation from staff and the applicant. Do we have any questions? Yes, Mary Alice.
Yes, I can start us off here. So there's been a lot of talk about the definition of medically fragile. So I was hoping that you could help us understand who that population is in the community.
So there are many, many different definitions of medically fragile. Some of it depends what institution is using it. So there's a whole variety of definitions. But medically fragile basically would include people like the gentleman who I brought here, who I helped make his statement this evening. He has type 1 diabetes, severe seizure disorder. We have people who are terminally ill with cancer. We have people who have all manner of different health conditions, heart failure, high blood pressure, diabetes. Often what we're talking about are individuals who have multiple conditions that create a constellation of very poor health. And people who are on the streets for a very long time, such as the population who we intend to serve, often acquire health issues from being on the streets. Infections in their feet, terrible wounds to their feet, and if they are diabetic, those wounds don't heal and can create their own problems. There's a whole host of things. It can also include, mental health issues, and so on. But it's basically what the people who we are looking to house are the folks who have been chronically homeless, but because of their health conditions, are not able to be housed successfully someplace else. They are also often not able to stay at shelters in a way that keeps them healthy because they just don't have the means to have everything that they need to stay healthy. The shelters also are not equipped to help manage people's health care and their health conditions. And so, there's a whole array of things. One of the things that I would like to say is that, people also, I understand the question and the issue of medical fragility, but I think it's also important to understand that people also have a right to privacy to what their health issues are. But it can be anything that is really significantly debilitating for people and where they need a lot of healthcare support.
I'll hold my other questions so that other people can.
Any other questions from committee? Yes, James.
Thank you for the presentation. I guess I would follow up with Mary Alice's question to say the answer that there are many definitions is a little bit uncomfortable for me. I would like to know if somebody has written, if there's many definitions out there, which one are you going to follow most closely, and can it be written down so that it's understood?
Yes, I can actually send y'all. There's an instrument, like a survey, an instrument, where you can assess a person's medical fragility on a number of different factors, including physical health, mental health, and so on. And I misspoke when I said there's many different definitions. What I should have said is there's many different measures of medical fragility. And so what we would be doing is we would use one of those measures. So we would be looking to house people who have been chronically homeless and, you know, who meet those criteria, but also who have, who score high on an instrument for medical fragility.
Okay, thank you. If you could send that to us, that would be helpful.
I can do that. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yes, Chris?
I think, Claudia, what the audience wants to hear and what they're suspecting is that medically vulnerable is kind of kept vague and open and, you know, ill-defined so that we can slip in regular homeless people back there. So what I guess I need to hear and what we need to hear from you is the people that are going to be allowed to live in Hope Village must have a medical condition of some kind. Is that what you're saying, or?
Yes, that is correct. This is not a bait and switch. We are not playing games about who we intend to serve. And as many people have pointed out, 30 homes are not enough. 30 homes are what we can do on this site and what we intend to do. But as the numbers of homeless increase in our community and in our society, and by the way, the numbers for elderly people are increasing. It's very alarming. But as those numbers increase, there's more and more homeless individuals who are going to be medically fragile. We will have more people who want to live at Hope Village than what we will be able to accommodate. There's no bait and switch. This is truly for people who have very serious health conditions and who, like somebody said in their comments, are going to the emergency room over and over again just to survive one more day. We want to change that.
Is there going to be, talk about the staffing levels and the security levels at Hope Village?
So we plan to have about 5 case managers, which would give, once the homes are fully occupied, there's 30 people, this would be a case management load of about 6 clients per case manager, which allows for intensive case management. So we will have case managers, there will be a director, there will be personnel to take care of, you know, the property, the grounds, and so on. We are looking at security personnel as well, but also using cameras, locks, fencing, et cetera, and policies for maintaining security. So I think probably, I don't know, did you want to add anything?
I think you'll see on the, you can see on the floor plan, the community center, there's 5 to 7 casework offices. There's also a security office intended for a security representative, and then augmented, as Claudia stated, with camera and you know, other security measures that you would have in a site like this.
What happens after 5 o'clock?
Well, we've got ongoing casework and capacity that's going to happen with you know, the staff on site. So it's intended to be staffed on site.
24 hours?
Correct.
7 days a week?
There'll be a director and or a person at the on site to be able to take those calls and deal with any issues with the residents.
No alcohol, no drugs out in the open, or?
Correct.
No parties outside?
Correct. I mean, there might be a picnic sometime, or, you know, some sort of activities like that, but you know, a lot of people are fearful about people congregating and drinking and partying and, you know, and things like that. That's not going to be happening. It's not allowed. Also, with all due respect, these folks who we're looking to house are really sick. You know, we have 3 clients right now who are terminally ill with cancer, who don't have a home. I can guarantee you they're not partying. I can guarantee you Matt Slavin, who came up here, is not partying. Our other client, Brandon Mitchell, who my coworker read his statement, they are not partying. They're trying to survive.
Right. This phrase, chain link for experimentation, I'm not sure what that means, but I do remember experimentation was referred to in relation to the Tuskegee experiments from way back. I just want to be clear that the experimentation that you're talking about is innovative architectural solar panels and energy systems and things like, that's the experiment, right?
It's research. Translational research.
But that's the experiment you're talking
experimentation.
about. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
I don't know where the other comments
yeah.
are.
Well, I guess people are afraid of medical, vulnerable people having diseases and infectious things that other people can catch. I don't know. Do you want to address that part of it, or?
I mean, we live in 2023. It's almost 2024.
Right.
We know how to manage people's conditions and so on. I don't really know how to address that, except for to say that everybody who will live at Hope Village will have health care case management, as well as the traditional intensive case management. They will have access to health care through the Carl Mobile Clinic and additional services provided by Promise Healthcare. So we will have a very good handle on what people's conditions are, what kind of health care that they need. The entire goal is to help people stabilize and hopefully help them get healthier and have some semblance of quality of life in their home and be healthy. I think those kinds of concerns are, they harken back to other kind of language and other issues that were really based in bigotry, I will just say.
Okay. I have two more questions to my colleagues.
Chris, could we go back around
Yeah,
and
that's
we'll
fine.
come back to you? Does anybody else who hasn't asked some questions have some? Yes, Sharice?
I want to know about the process. The issues that have come forward regarding this particular project. You did exactly what I thought you'd do. You changed the rules in the middle of the game.
In what way?
In the way that you decided that the address and access are now they're irrelevant. Now they're irrelevant. The Plan Commission could not really come to a recommendation. And when we talk about the issue of surrounding neighborhoods, which was supposed to be kind of important, so I thought, especially since you're getting federal monies, that doesn't seem to be so important because you're claiming everything by right. So, basically you are. You put the detention center, the detention pond in and after you telling us that you would just be building a community center and a model home, there's a parking lot and a road already put in from Carver Drive. And I don't recall any of that being, so I want to talk about the process. I don't have a problem with Hope Village. I don't have a problem helping the homeless. I don't have a problem helping the mentally ill. That's something I did when I didn't live here. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is the process.
And so doing questions now, it sounds
That
like,
is
that
my
the
question. Why
about process?
Why did you feel it was, because 90% of what the complaint is really about the detention pond and the address, and you You made those things irrelevant. Why did you do that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I
but
just made the question plain for you. Why did you make the address and the detention pond irrelevant? Because it wasn't something that was irrelevant for the Plan Commission.
The detention pond is not irrelevant.
Well,
It's a key
it's
piece of the
something- it's-
drainage requirements of the project. As far as the orientation of the lot north and south, it's been presented, and there's an application in front of you for approval this evening for the subdivision of the 12 acres. The
And
project on
I'm
Hope
not
Village-
looking for, I'm not talking about the subdivision. Right now, we're talking about the PUD, correct?
I'm sorry, but you were.
We're talking about the PUD, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my question is, at the beginning of your presentation, Kevin Garcia said very plainly that regarding access and address, that was legally or something, you changed the rules. Why did you do that?
Well, I did not change the rules. Perhaps we can have our attorney weigh in on this.
Yes, attorney, weigh in on this.
To be honest, I'm not sure, I guess, in terms of what we're changing. I think Kevin's description of the idea of what ends up occurring with regard to addresses or access, I think is one that's driven by whatever the PUD application looks like when it comes in. So the background, the idea of what was originally in place, and I know that there's been commentary about that the address associated with this is Federal Drive and not Carver Drive. I can't necessarily speak to that. I can only speak to what is shown in this PUD application, this development here, with respect to whatever addresses may be assigned or how access is driven is literally by this particular site on its own.
So then the address is 1799 Federal Drive.
Ma'am, I'm not saying that, council member. I'm just saying is
okay.
that when they're developing this, that is what's potentially going to drive the address.
To my knowledge and understanding, there is no address of 1799 Federal Drive. This is a 12-acre parcel described by a legal description of farmland.
Why was that on the PUD?
If you go to the if you let me finish, please.
Go ahead.
If you go to the GIS map and pull the location site, it clearly states location, not address, 1799 Federal Drive. It's the closest address to identify the 12-acre parcel. At some point in every development, and once the land is subdivided, there will be addresses assigned either by the city or by the Postal Service, however that happens, okay? But this would be very difficult for Hope Village on its current site, as we've put and applied for, to have a Federal Drive address when it cannot access, nor does it touch Federal Drive. The proposed application is for Lot 101, which is the south portion of the 12 acres. Again, if you look in your packet, there's clear identification of the subdivision of the 12 acres. And Hope Village is on the south portion of that 12 acres. It does not touch, it's not contiguous, nor will it have access to Federal Drive.
Thank you for the explanation on that. Other questions from council members who haven't asked questions yet? I did have one, and then we'll go back around to others the second time. Maybe one or two questions on a topic here of emergency vehicles. You said you'd have 24-hour staff, and I was wondering if that would also include medical staff and lift assist for avoiding emergency vehicles going down Carver Drive, except when they're absolutely needed, like if someone needs help off the floor or taking their blood pressure in the middle of the night, an ambulance wouldn't be called for those minor things.
Yes, first of all, I just want to say you don't always know when something's minor or major,
sure.
Right? My dad has called for lift assist, and it turned out that he was having a very serious medical crisis that he didn't recognize for himself. However, if it is a simple lift assist, every resident will have a number for Hope Village that they can contact first for help. So, because we will have people on site, on staff, so if somebody needs help with something inside their home, we can have staff go there and help them. Will there be occasions when somebody needs to call medical services for lift assist. Of course, it happens all over our community all the time, happens on my street all the time. But again, the goal is to understand each resident's health issues and what they need. And for example, if we see that somebody is starting to lose their balance for some unknown reason, we will help them get evaluated, try to address the issue, and then try to prevent problems as a result of that. If somebody needs a walker because they're not very stable and they haven't used a walker, and that can help them be more stable, we will be making sure that they get the resources and the supports that they need. But yes, we're going to do, one of the whole points of Hope Village is to stabilize people's health, and that includes reducing emergencies and also the need for emergency services.
Thank you. And if there was no others, first timers, yeah, Chandra, first question, and we'll go back to seconds.
So thank you for the mass amounts of information. There was something about, like, it'll take longer, like if there was a road built on Federal Drive, it takes longer to go around versus going through Carver Drive, like in an emergency, a true emergency. Can you talk about like how those minutes, or how many minutes even, that would take, and why you chose Carver versus Federal?
So just looking at a MapQuest or GIS, you can get the distance difference between heading Lincoln Avenue to Killarney, to Kenyon Road, down Federal Drive into the Hope Village project versus coming up Lincoln to Bradley directly on Carver to Hope Village. Now, there's probably a number of ways to calculate this difference in distance, whether you're going 30 miles an hour, 80 miles an hour, or whatever the case may be, or what the traffic is. But the few tests we did were from 2 to 4 minutes difference in response time. Now, that may not sound like a lot to most of us that aren't involved in the delivery of healthcare, but 2 minutes is substantial time difference if you're waiting on an ambulance or in the back of an ambulance in a medical crisis.
Real quick, if I may, just to make it very plain, what Marty was talking about, the response time, it is so important, especially if a stroke is suspected, or there's a heart attack, or like my client who was here earlier who had blood sugars that went down to 35. That is an emergency, and every second counts. And so that's part of the answer to your question, just to give a couple of examples of health conditions.
Thank you. And we'll go back to Mary Alice.
All right, I have a couple of quick questions. The first one, you talked about traffic, and you hired a consultant to do it, and you talked about 15 trips. I just want to clarify, it was 15 trips both in the morning and the evening. Is that right, or is it 15 trips? Yes?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that I had my notes down. And then there was a question in the audience, this is more for Kevin and the lawyers, about what is a valid protest. I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
Sure. So a valid protest, according to the zoning ordinance, requires the signatures of 40% of the property owners that own property within 250 feet of a site, excluding rights of way. So if there's a street that's 50 feet wide, we would go out 300 feet from the site because that's 250 plus 50, basic math. So that's the definition.
Okay, so I guess let me clarify a little bit. So the Plan Commission kind of sort of voted. They didn't really vote. And then the City Council is up for a vote. You know, usually when you have a protest, a formal protest, it requires a supermajority to pass. So my question to you is there a valid protest on file so that it requires a supermajority for council?
So we're evaluating that right now. There are 50 parcels that are within that space, so they would need signatures of owners of 20 of those 50 parcels, and we will we will make sure that we have that information for you by the council meeting next week, or whenever we meet.
January 2nd.
January 2nd.
Okay, we'll go Chris and keep going around.
Marty, I don't know if you can answer my next few questions, but just do your best. What is Carl's plan with the north part of the parcel?
We have no plans at this point. We'll remain farming until there's, a requested development, most likely not by Carl. We have no intention, no use for the parcel at this time. The only reason the full 12 acres was bought is we had no choice. The intention was to purchase just enough property to donate to Hope Village.
Right, so there's no ulterior plans at this time that Carl has, or never had.
No,
okay, let's
never
just say
had.
it that way. But, so how in the future would this neighborhood be informed of when a plan came up besides agriculture? Like, what happens then? I mean,
I
you're
guess
the
I'm not-
owners. I know it's not yours that.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the city process is for notification of neighbors of a development that's approved by right within zoning, and I know we don't like to use the term by right, but, if there's any notification, but it's no different than the property to the west, which there's a vast amount of developable farmland within the comp plan that's already been annexed. It's in the enterprise zone. I think the fact that it's in the enterprise zone and that it's zoned and it's part of the comp plan and growth strategy for Urbana, that someone should expect at some point, whether it be in our lifetime or someone else's, that this property will be developed. But Carl, at this point, has no interest and no intention of developing that remaining 5 acres, 6 acres, whatever it is. In fact, we've already talked to the neighboring farmer to get him to joint farm it for us.
Okay, last question, Grace. And again, Marty, if you can't answer, I understand. But you said that Hope Village cannot resolve all these infrastructure problems of that neighborhood. But you know who can? Carl Hospital can. Or help. And there's a history, as you that you didn't cause, and that a perceived history that Carl Hospital has kind of messed over the North End in general in all kinds of ways. So my question to you, Marty, is does Hope Village begin to represent Carl Hospital developing a real relationship with the residents north of University Avenue? I know you can't answer.
I'm trying to be respectful and answer that. I think that as a community, we all have an opportunity and a reason to be involved and support the neighborhoods that have been neglected for decades. The city of Urbana is in as great a shape or great a position as any one of us to drive economic development, encourage enticement with local development and others to get neighborhood businesses, to incentivize private development in these neighborhoods that have been neglected for so many years. It's easy to fall back on the University of Illinois or Carl or whoever, but I think as a community collectively, we owe it to our neighbors and Hope Village, which is not Carl, Hope Village. Carl is providing community health initiatives to Hope Village, but Hope Village is a standalone organization, its own 501c3, to be 501c3 organization. And I think that we've already demonstrated more than a willingness to work with the neighborhood. We've talked about neighborhood advisory boards. We've talked about involvement and our desire to integrate the neighborhood with Hope Village. We've seen examples across the country where projects start with a certain amount of opposition. And over time, the fears that are come at the beginning of a project, the biases that we're all faced with on a project like this, I have a true naivety, I guess, and hope that the neighborhood and the residents of Hope Village are going to integrate together and be part of one neighborhood. And we will do everything as Hope Village that we can to integrate the neighborhood into programs, into connection with the residents. And if it takes something as silly as Tuesday night chili suppers or Taco Thursday or whatever. Let's get the neighborhood and the residents together. And I'm sorry if that sounds silly, Councilmember Hershey, but there is
No, it doesn't sound silly. It sounds hypocritical.
There is a sincere
Not
interest.
done the things that the
Point of order
neighborhood is
and let
already,
the
point of order.
speaker finish, please.
But anyway, no, he addressed me. So let's say that right now. He addressed me. So since he addressed me, I can answer back. Point that order.
Please do.
You could
Okay.
ask for the floor
I'm
after he's done
saying,
speaking.
what
and he's
I'm
done with the
saying
floor.
is that it's kind of hypocritical. And I say that because you have a surrounding community that has begged you for months to be straight with them. You have a surrounding community that has begged you. They don't feel, if a person doesn't feel like they're getting the truth, then if you can't give them straight answers, they have begged you, they have asked you, we have said for months that they didn't want the access to go through Carver Drive. They wanted the access up through Federal Drive, mainly because that's what's on your application. So it's
Point of
not,
order.
it's not something, it's not, I would love to see what you want.
The applicant needs to be able to answer.
So if you could answer me that.
I believe he was answering a previous question when they had the floor, and we had a order of some questions here.
I just wanted to address Councilmember Evans' question about Carl and engagement. Carl has a mobile unit, mobile clinic. It regularly goes to Love Corner Church, which is not far from there. We have, from the beginning, stated that the mobile unit will be coming to Hope Village and that the services it will offer will be available not only to the Hope Village residents, but anybody in the neighborhood as well. We will inform people of the schedule, give them an opportunity to avail themselves, if they so wish, of those services. There will also be a mobile grocery that Carl sponsors that will be open to the community. And then, there's a lot that Carl does in other areas, including Garden Hills and so on. There's a lot of work that is going on and efforts to engage. And we designed Hope Village with the entrance the way it is and the opportunity for the Carl Mobile Unit to come around and be in a place where Hope Village residents as well as neighborhood residents can access it.
Madam Chair, I just would like to acknowledge the time is now 10:22 and we will have to extend when we get to 10:30.
Chris, just to follow up and finish answering the question, I think the condition that was put on the approval of PUD from the Plan Commission to the City Council addresses the very issue of us continuing to work together after construction and during operational stage of Hope Village, working with the City of Urbana, working with the City of Champaign, working with the residents, and as I said, including a neighborhood advisory board to continue this process to try and mitigate issues. I will refute the notion and the repeated comment that we're not listening to the neighborhood. And I provided 8 items tonight that because of the input from the neighborhood were changed in our design plan. I think what we're hearing, what I believe I'm hearing is you're not getting the answer you want on 1 or 2 specific items. And for that, I'm sorry. But the project is not going to be able to address the Federal Drive desire for access.
Thank you for those answers. I have, I think, a quick motion, and we'll keep going around with questions or comments. So, Jaya, go ahead. Oh, I thought you were motioning to extend. We need a motion to extend first. If somebody is willing to do that, we'll take that.
I think my questions will be quick enough, I hope.
Okay.
And I will yield to move to extend if that's not the case. So I have a zoning question, I have a procedural question, and I have a question of the plan. Procedural question is
could I accept
understand-
Chandra's motion to extend the meeting first? Otherwise, we're cut off at 10:30 in 6 minutes. Okay, do we have a second to extend until, did you say 11? Yes. Okay.
I'll second.
Do we need a vote? All in favor?
Voice vote.
Oh, yeah, okay. All in favor to extend until 11?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're extended till 11, thank you. And your questions, go ahead.
Okay, so my procedural question is, because we don't know what the vote required will be to pass this, my understanding is to move this to council, we do not have to have a supermajority. Is that correct?
That is correct. So we are not approving out of final action this evening, so a standard majority is appropriate to forward it to council at the time of council. If the petition is reviewed and deemed to be sufficient, that is when a supermajority will be triggered, will be for final action of approval at council.
That's true for anything that we consider in
Correct.
committee of
That
the
is
whole,
the
right?
standard procedure for
so
all
we won't
items.
require a stringent number coming out of committee of the whole. The second question is about zoning. There's a question about what happens to the parcel above. This is all R4, correct? So
That is correct.
And I guess there must be some way to do agriculture in R4, or else it wouldn't have been farmed for all this time.
I could look that up for you, but even if it were not, it would be an existing non-conforming use, so it would be allowed to continue.
But it means that if it's ever developed by Carl or a subsequent purchaser of the land, it's going to have to conform to R4 at this point, unless we take an action to make it business or something that matches the stuff to the north.
That is correct.
And that'll come to council.
Yes.
Right, okay, so the substantial question I have is, I see on the plan here that there's a gate or a fence that goes all the way around the property, and there appears to be gates on the emergency access road. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct. Those are for emergency vehicles.
So there's a way to control the use of those roads by vehicles, other than only emergency access?
Only
can do that.
emergency access.
How do people who are walking get in and out of the area? Because the way it looks to me, like there's always a gate there.
Yeah,
or
there's
a fence
an
there.
entrance gate at the clubhouse.
Okay. At the community center?
At the community center, I'm sorry.
Okay, and how, can you describe what the fence is going to be and what it looks like?
And so I think in the plan submittal, there's a rendering that shows the type of fencing as you come up Carver Drive. It's a black ornamental, galvanized type fence.
I'll pull that up. That might have been in your in here. Yeah.
Approximately 4 feet tall, is that what?
Can I go full screen?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Whatever.
those exact details haven't been specified yet in the construction documents, but
Okay.
Oh.
All right, those were my questions. Thank you.
there you go.
Okay, any other, thank you for pulling that up for us. Any other questions? Yes, Mary Alice.
So Kevin, this is R4. And I don't know how many feet is in an acre, but I Googled it and it said it was 200. So I multiplied it by 7, which is 14,000. So what I'm trying to figure out here is, we originally approved this as an R4 for an apartment complex. Approximately how many units could be built on the 7 acres?
So I mean, as a city planner, we get questions like this all the time, and
I know.
usually it's show us your plans, because there are many factors that go into it. There's many things you can do. I can tell you this: the previous proposal for Union Gardens was pretty low density. They were doing mostly duplexes on this lot. That proposal would have allowed 132 dwelling units by right, and each dwelling unit could have up to 4 unrelated people living in it. So just quick math, that's over 500 people on site. And again, that was sort of a lower density.
But that's a lower density, was it for, because I know they also had land to the west of that. I
They
didn't
did.
know-
It was all a mix of sort of duplexes and apartment buildings. But I know I looked this up, a couple months ago, since this project was in, and I know it's 132 units that could be on this site. I think there was higher density sort of on the other sites to the west. You could develop it at higher density than 132 units. I'm confident
Okay, and
of
then,
that.
just so I'm clear, in the PUD process, it goes with the owner, right? So if a PUD process gets approved and say they sell it, does that go with the property or does it go with the owner? Does that make sense?
But, yeah, I mean, well, if you get approved for a PUD and you build a PUD, it would go with the property. I mean, if they sold it to somebody else would have that. We can't really rescind.
Let me rephrase.
Okay, sorry.
I don't think anything, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe funding falls out, whatever. Maybe something just doesn't pan out with the project, okay? If we approve the PUD and then for some unforeseeable thing happens, it's not able to come to fruition and then it needs to be sold. Do you see where I'm going here? I'm not saying that they've built something. I'm just trying to figure out
Yeah.
in the future, what's the impact?
I think I see where you're going with this, and I can look in my zoning ordinance and see, but I think if the PUD is approved and it's for a very specific use, it could ostensibly get sold and somebody else could use it for that very specific use. But they couldn't say, just turn these into market rate housing without requiring a process, which would be a PUD amendment, which would come through Plan Commission and City Council. And I can rest assured we will let the neighborhood know that that would happen. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, motions? Okay, Chris.
Yeah, I'd like to motion for approval ordinance number 2023-12-050, an ordinance approving a final plat development plan for a planned unit development that is planned case number 2480-PUD-23
And to council.
for a consent agenda and at the regular council meeting. No? What? Don't do, okay.
Up to you.
Just for the next council meeting.
Okay, so you move it to regular agenda for council meeting with, is there a recommendation? I don't know if you have to. No recommendation?
No.
Oh, for approval. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I'm clarifying. Okay, thank you, Chris. We take a second if there's any.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Chandra. Any discussion? Yes, Jaya.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate everybody coming out and all the questions. I also appreciate all the answers because I think there have been a lot of really important questions, but I also think that in listening to the various meetings over these months, there have also been a lot of very direct answers to the questions that residents are asking. I think there's also been a lot of misinformation about this project. And I think it's also important for us to keep in mind that these are homes. Right, we're getting really caught up in who's going to be living in these homes, but this is a neighborhood. These are homes for people who need homes, just like any other neighborhood in Urbana, in Champaign County. And I'm concerned that this process is installing a double standard in terms of how we work through this. Can't think of, we've had a few other PUDs come in front of us. I haven't heard anybody ask questions about the staffing for those PUDs. I haven't heard people ask questions about the behavior of the people who might live in those homes. And so I want to challenge us to think about, why are we asking those questions, right? There have been a lot of questions that, again, are worth asking. I think it's okay for community members to ask those questions and to make sure that their questions are being answered. But please listen to the answers and think about, what does it mean that we are applying this standard to these folks who are literally trying to survive when we do not ask these questions of anybody else? And I understand that it might feel like this is something that is specific to this location, but in the over 2 years, just a little over 2 years that I've been on city council, every single time, whether it's in Ward 3, whether it's in Ward 5, whether it's in Ward 2, anytime we are asked to provide support for folks who are unhoused, we see the same exact reaction. We see the same exact questions of what are they going to be doing, assumptions and allegations about the behaviors of the folks that are literally out on the streets, thinking about how do they get through? How do they make it? And some folks have had those experiences. Some folks have been on the edge of having those experiences. And so really thinking about what does it mean? How do we value life in this community if we're applying this standard to folks who are unhoused when we do not apply it to anyone else in this community? So I will be voting for moving this forward with my full support.
Thank you. Other discussion? Yes, Sharice?
Jaya, I am in total agreement with what you just said. And the questions that I've had throughout this process, even with the very first meeting I had with Marty and Claudia, was how do we support this particular community? And those questions moved from being about how to substantiate, because there aren't any grocery stores, there aren't any banks, there aren't any pharmacies close to that fragile community. So I made that plain and clear, okay? It's not that I have an issue with housing the homeless. And I've never said that I did. That's not even something that's ever come out of my mouth. The issue I have is the process in which this has been moved forward. And the lack of, or just the dismissal. I understand trying to go through and help people. That's what we do. But at the same time, you don't disenfranchise another community to do that. And the surrounding community has felt that way. So I'm not trying to dismiss or to say that is not important for us to house the homeless, but you also have to take in consideration the surrounding community and what they were feeling. And the basic issue has been access. That's been, we wouldn't be here, having this discussion. It probably would have passed a long time ago if they had been just held to, if they had been held to the same standards that we hold other PUDs to.
Thank you. Other discussion? Yes, Mary Alice?
I just want to go back for a moment because I agree with Jaya that we're not trying to regulate who lives here, even though there's been a lot of conversation about the lack of housing for homeless, which is ironic because it's the same word. And so I'm really trying to look at this project through the lens of, regardless of who's going to be here, what does this project look like? And in addition, because we've recently been rezoning things for a particular purpose, I want to ensure that whatever we do here doesn't accidentally do something to the whole parcel, right? So I'm trying to look through it with that lens. And I talked to Claudia, and thank you for your time this weekend. One of the things that I had asked her was, what happens with that northern part? If you subdivide it and it's agriculture, is it make a new thoroughfare from Carver all the way up and open up that whole space? I mean, that was one of my questions, right? And so if you wouldn't mind going to the layout of the land, and I said, well, what happens if you want to have 100 tiny homes? If Carl gives you that. And the way it's laid out right now, there is, unless you demolish some of the tiny homes and some of the fence, there's no way to get to that northern part. It's kind of what I'm saying here. So I'm looking at it through that lens. And if I look at the Carver Parks list that they sent on October 5th, there's basically 4 things that they've asked for. And traffic and access, drainage, detention pond, and safety, and then initial development of 30. I don't quite understand that one. But so it sounds to me like the drainage, I believe, has been addressed in terms of where that's going to go north, right? So it's not going to go south into the neighborhood. The detention pond, there was concern about several things, which you already talked about, putting a fence in that has locked access and having an aerator so there's not stagnant water. And then the safety is, it sounds like you're also going to have some safety measures in place on the entire property. So the big thing that it isn't addressed, I think it's fair for us to say that they attempted to address some of the neighborhood concerns. Traffic is partially addressed in terms of the study, having 30 cars a day, basically, rather than 15, right, 30 trips. It really comes down to that federal access. And so I had said, well, you know, really, I think the point is that the emergency vehicles need to be able to get there as quickly as possible, right? And pedestrians need to be able to access the resources in the rest of the community, such as bus stops and walking to different places. So I had asked the question, what happens if the rest of the entrance was on the north and the southern entrance was just for pedestrians and emergency vehicles? And I think that the result that I got is a little wishy-washy, so to speak. I think because you're trying to divide up the parcels, there's real no access from the federal drive down to this parcel. Is that correct? Okay, all right, because that's where I stand right now. Those are the questions that I had in terms of reviewing this. I'm leaning towards approving this because as I look at the plan, I'm thinking about what could go there, what it is already zoned for, and what we were thinking was going to go there, which would have had a much bigger impact on the community. I don't think that the applicants addressed 100% of the concerns of the community, but I think that they addressed a lot of the concerns of the community. So that's where I stand right now.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Yes, Chandra.
I agree, Mary Alice. I think that most of the concerns were addressed by the applicant, and they did so to the best of their ability, I suppose. The only outstanding thing is the switching the access drives, but it just sounds like that is just not feasible. And we just, it's a different lot. So Hope Village Inc. does not own that. Like Carl owns that above. Carl donated the land. If they don't want to create a street there, it's up to the landowner to do that. And if there's no street there, there's no street there. This council has set goals and prioritized housing as, as one of our goals. And so I'm glad this is a project that's happening in our city. As we've heard, there is a gap where medically fragile people don't have access to or don't have the ability to stay in shelters or transitional housing and get the services they need. So I'm glad to see this is standing up. I hope that it could be replicated in Champaign, in the county, in another state. Like, this is innovative. So I will definitely be supporting this.
And then also just wanted to point out that we are coming up to 10:43. I know there's a lot to say. We are going to discuss this on the regular agenda at council.
Yeah, I would like to also call the question so we can just vote.
I'd had a chance to speak.
Sure, round of discussion, James.
I'm really uncomfortable with how the meeting has been run and recognizing people, but I am going to be comfortable voting this to council. I understand we're going to get some more information between now and then. I understand we're going to know about the protest and whether that's valid or not. That's going to create the actual action vote at council. So having
Yes.
it move forward to council does not imply that it's going to pass. The standard there may be higher than what the standard is here. But I am comfortable that we've had enough input and feedback for it to move on to council for that vote. So I will be supporting it.
Thank you for your input. And then I think for the sake of time, has anyone had a chance to speak once, at least for discussion, who would like to? Okay, now I'm sorry to cut off a second time. I also have things to say, but I think we need to finish this and continue it the next time. So if we could call the question for tonight. So we have a motion by Chris to approve on recommendation for approval on regular agenda at City Council. Our next meeting will be January 2nd, and that was seconded by Chandra. And could the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
No.
Miss Kolisetty,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That moves to council on January 2nd. And our next item is ordinance number 2023-12-051, an ordinance approving a preliminary/final subdivision plat, Hope Village subdivision plan case 2479-S-23.
All right, I will be extremely brief. Okay, so council is being asked to approve the combined preliminary and final plat for the Hope Village subdivision. The Plan Commission reviewed this combination plat on November 9th and December 7th and voted with 4 ayes and 1 nay to send the case to City Council with no recommendation. Our city's land development code requires review of combination plats for conformity with the comprehensive plan, applicable general area plans, which is not applicable in this case, and our zoning regulations. It also requires the city engineer to review for conformity with those same items, plus generally accepted engineering practices, particularly as these apply to stormwater, water, and sewer facilities. The plat's also reviewed for conformity with our flood hazard areas of the city code. The proposed plat meets all of the review criteria, and thus staff recommend approval. Just really briefly, it would be this subdivision is just subdividing the lot into 2 lots. So lot 101 down here, which is the site of the Hope Village planned unit development, and then lot 102, which again would be just continued use in agricultural, which, to answer the question from last time, agricultural is allowed in R4. Okay.
Thank you. Any critical questions? Yes, James?
Does it make any sense for the thing that we just passed to go forward if this thing doesn't pass?
I think it would, it might make sense, but it would be much cleaner if this goes forward as well.
Yes, Sharice?
Kevin, is it, according to what I saw on the Plan Commission, is this absolutely necessary for the PUD to pass?
I do not believe that it is. However, I think it's the cleanest path forward is to separate this lot into 2 lots, the southern lot being the site of Hope Village, the northern lot being used for agriculture.
But it's not necessary. That's what I'm asking. Is it unnecessary?
I'll defer to Dave.
If I may just answer briefly, yeah, as Kevin's kind of alluded to, they're in a sense kind of tied together because the application for the PD is driven by the subdivision here because it's only going to be on one parcel of this particular subdivision. And so if the subdivision doesn't go forward, then there is no lot ultimately applied to the PUD.
Okay, any other questions? People who have not been able to? Yes, Sharice?
Okay, but what I'm asking, I'm just talking to city attorney here. But what I'm asking is that the PUD will still pass even if this doesn't.
If the PUD passes and this doesn't, this is what creates the lot the PUD is on. So in a sense, then you end up affecting the PUD because now there's no lot on which it actually was applied to be on.
Thank you. Willing to entertain a motion? Yes, Jaya?
I'd like to make a recommendation for approval of ordinance number 2023-12-051, an ordinance approving a preliminary/final subdivision plat, Hope Village subdivision / plan case 2479S23.
Thank you.
For approval.
I'm sorry, did you say regular?
Regular agenda for approval.
Oh, okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Jaya, seconded by Chandra. Any discussion? Okay, would the clerk please call the roll?
Miss Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Miss Hersey,
No.
Miss Kolisetty,
Yes.
Miss Bishop,
Yes.
Miss Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That ordinance carries on to council. Last item of business is council input and communications. In our last few minutes, anything to share? Okay, seeing none with no, oh, yes, Sharice.
I just want to say, all this went exactly how I thought it would go. And regarding this PUD. And I feel somewhat disenfranchised. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other council input? Okay, with no further business
Grace?
before, yes, Mary Alice?
Since we do have a few minutes, I do want to say that I attended the Plan Commission meeting, and I know that there was some concern about a closed session. I just wanted to correct for the record, it was not a closed session, it was a recess. The recess was to discuss with the city attorney what steps were legally they were allowed to take. The mayor went back there to tell them that's the only thing that they were allowed to do. So I just wanted to clear the air a little bit about that process.
No, I'm sorry, public input is only at that time in the meeting. All right, any other council input? Okay, with no further business before us, we are adjourned. Thank you.